Chapter 604. The smoke and dust over the city slowly dissipated. The cold starlight shone on the city that was already in ruins. The corpses were cold, and the blood had completely solidified. In the formless and stiff scene, all the sword light and killing intent were dimming. In countless corners, all the survivors were silent and even a little dull. The black and white and the meteor-like colorful sword light had completely disappeared. But the supreme sword intent seemed to be imprinted between heaven and earth and in the depths of everyone's heart. No words could describe that sword strike. The sword light lit up in the sky tens of thousands of meters away, with thousands of residual shadows. It burned the night sky, tore heaven and earth, stirred up a raging tide, and penetrated the city. That sword strike was gorgeous, sharp, crazy, and determined. The real power was indescribable. When the sword light shattered all the obstacles, cut through the black and white, cut off the coldness of 9 states, and even penetrated Wang Tianzong without any hindrance, there were only the most ordinary words left in everyone's heart. It was thrilling. That was the most thrilling sword strike in the dark world for hundreds of years. The starry sky and the scorching sun, reality and illusion alternated. An eternal sword strike. It was like the declaration in the air at the moment when the long sword lit up. You are all nonentities. A major general of the Beihai Corps stared at the sky in a daze. The black and white and colorful sword light had long disappeared. But countless lights and shadows were still flashing in his pupils. He muttered to himself, suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and fell straight to the ground. In the purgatory of Heaven Capital, a veteran of the Li family shook his head desperately. In severe pain, he seemed to want to reach out and cover his head. But as soon as he stretched out his hand, his whole body had become completely stiff. In the Samsara Palace, a core expert whose status was not inferior to that of a supermaster fell to the ground. Blood flowed from his mouth. He tried to open his mouth and reached out to grab something. Tens of thousands of meters away. The Sword Emperor and the Master of Samsara Palace exchanged a sword strike. The nearly eternal sword light was still flashing and replaying. No one knew whether it was a long time or a short time. Countless survivors' wills were completely shattered by that sword light. Some people's foundation was completely destroyed, and some people lost their vitality. That was supposed to be a supreme power, but on this night, there was a confrontation between the two. The 2 sword lights, one above and one below, almost destroyed the will of all the experts. When the sword lights fell, it was unknown how many experts' foundations were severely damaged. Wang Tianzong stood where he was. He rose up in a straight line and fell down in a straight line. That soul-stirring sword seemed to have left no trace on him other than some blood. He looked in the direction of the sword light for an unknown amount of time before he slowly withdrew his gaze. Powerful life force gathered in his body, and the huge life force combined with the last white mist in the air, continuously repairing his body. His aura was recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in the blink of an eye, he seemed to have returned to his peak. It was not until this moment that the crowd in a trance was sure that when the sword light rushed over and penetrated Wang Tianzong's chest at the last moment, it was not an illusion. Wang Tianzong did not block the sword. In the end, he still used the immortality potion. That meant Wang Tianzong's life. This might be exciting news. But now the sword light had completely disappeared, and Wang Tianzong was still standing there. All the excitement instantly turned into despair. Wang Tianzong sighed softly. His slight voice seemed to spread throughout the city and fell in everyone's ears. The people who were still in a trance suddenly woke up. The sword light disappeared completely. The world was silent. Wang Tianzong stood there with a strong aura, invincible in the world. The body of the coldness of 9 states had been smashed, but the last picture was still the picture of Wang Tianzong looking down at Mormons. The general trend surged over Mormons and began to dissipate. In the desolation and confusion, the chaos in Eastern Europe came to an end. Everything came to an end at the moment when the 2 sword lights met. Whether they liked it or not, the end was like this. So more and more people struggled to stand up. They knelt down in the direction of Wang Tianzong, prostrating themselves to show their submission. The loser should pay the price of dignity and more. Wang Tianzong did not speak. He looked into the distance, through the chaotic crowd and ruins. In silence, the elites of Samsara Palace had dragged the most important figures away from the battlefield. Lin Fengting, who was in a coma. Li Quangtu, who was seriously injured and dying. Li Shi, they had gradually gone far away, but this distance was not far for Wang Tianzong. One step, or two steps, but Wang Tianzong did not move. He quietly watched them get farther and farther away. From beginning to end, he did not move. In the countless voices of submission and worship, he trampled all of Eastern Europe and even the entire dark world under his feet. He thought of the sword light that had disappeared but seemed to exist eternally. He had never thought of that kind of kendo, nor did he expect that Samsara Palace would have such a sword. The 13-story building, which used the whole city as a sword formation, completely broke out the moment Xianyuan Feng entered the sky above the city. The sword formation was ignited in an instant. Until that moment, the power of that sword was really at its peak. That sword contained everything of the master of Samsara Palace. It was the sword intent that Xianyuan Feng had accumulated for many years. It was the complete cooperation of the 13-story building under the guidance of flaming fire. It was also Lin Fengting's peak all-out attack. This was the trump card of Samsara Palace, which was unprecedentedly powerful. The voice of worship and submission was like a tsunami. Wang Tianzong was a little melancholic. August 24th was about to pass. Samsara Palace was completely destroyed on this day. The master of Samsara Palace lost the last group of elites on the battlefield, but she also got the result she wanted. Wang Tianzong knew that he could not stop all this after all. He defeated the master of Samsara Palace. But he did not defeat that sword light. No victory, no defeat. Perhaps from the very beginning, this chaos was destined to have no victor. Wang Tianzong raised his head and looked in another direction. Among the countless prostrating figures, an extremely tall figure stood there. Wang Tianzong looked at him. The other party was also looking at him. That was Tyrant. Tyrant with indefinite grace in his hand. The other party stood there quietly, looking at Sword Emperor who suppressed the entire dark world. His eyes were a little playful, a little indifferent, and a little cruel. The fact is obvious. Wang Tianzong said slowly, "You are on the wrong team. Hypnosis is not that magical." Tyrant said indifferently, "Especially when you are not in the transcendent realm, it is even more difficult to hypnotize an expert who is close to the peak of the invincible realm, and it is even more impossible to turn an invincible realm expert into a puppet. Samsara Palace hypnotized me, but at the critical moment, it could only influence my decision to a certain extent. In other words, their hypnosis could make me make the most correct choice at a more rational time." Wang Tianzong said yes. His eyes were unfathomable. Is this the right choice? Of course. Tyrant smiled and strode over. For now, it seems that this result is not bad. Ha, Wang Tianzong also laughed. Don't look at me like that. Tyrant's eyes were a little crazy. You can't threaten me. I was tempted to cooperate with the Wang family of Beihai, but when you are strong enough to sweep the dark world, there is no place for the Polar Ground Alliance. If I don't do anything tonight, I will definitely be a dog at the feet of the Wang family of Beihai in the future. I have enough of such a life. I can shoot you now. I've ruined your plan. I have to say that this murderous weapon is very useful. So it's mine. After tonight, Snow Country is also mine. Maybe the Wang family of Beihai will also be mine." Wang Tianzong didn't move. He just looked at Tyrant with some pity in his eyes. Why? Because I still have the power to fight. Tyrant laughed wildly. What about you? You look strong and at the peak, but in fact, you are just bluffing. So what if you are the Heavenly Sun? In the face of that sword, I don't believe that you still have the ability to kill me. If you really have this ability, over there. He pointed to the direction of Li Guangtu's retreat and the manor in that direction. Li Tianlan was in the manor. They are all there. If you still have the power to fight, why don't you go and kill them? You may want to, but you can't. He was getting closer and closer to Wang Tianzong. The remaining army of the Wang family of Beihai gathered and rushed over. Tyrant sneered. Sword Emperor. Go to hell. He raised his hand and slapped Wang Tianzong's face hard. He liked this action and the feeling of smashing the famous sword light with one slap. The condensed domain was released in his hand. Tyrant laughed and waved his arm hard. There was no crisp sound. Patter, something seemed to fall to the ground. The sharp pain came to the brain after a short stagnation. Blood spurted out. Tyrant opened his eyes wide. His eyes were bloodshot and extremely ferocious. The moment his arm was about to touch Wang Tianzong, he seemed to enter another world. That world was vast and deep, and the sword light was surging. He had no room to struggle at all. The sword light swept over and directly cut his arm. How is it possible? Tyrant's ferocious roar sounded. I told you. Wang Tianzong took a step forward. You are on the wrong team. The sword energy did not light up, but there was a slight friction sound in the air. Wang Tianzong walked past Tyrant and reached out to take the indefinite grace in his hand. The broken coldness of 9 states and the indefinite grace shrank in his hand at the same time. He stepped forward. Tyrant behind him had completely stiffened. An icy wind blew over the silent city. The icy wind swept over. Tyrant's body shattered in an instant and turned into ashes, swirling in the air. The chaos in Eastern Europe began with the collapse of the Polar Ground Alliance. It also ended with the complete destruction of the Polar Ground Alliance. Countless masters knelt on the ground, shivering, and no longer dared to resist. Wang Tianzong did not look at them. He walked slowly in the city, but he crossed a distance of hundreds of meters with one step. His figure was getting farther and farther away and disappeared in an instant. The white mist in the manor completely dissipated. A large number of corpses almost covered the manor. After treating the wounds of Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi, a small number of elites of Samsara Palace carried their bodies into the villa of the manor. Li Guangtu, Lin Fengting, and Li Shi were still being carried to the manor. Qin Weibai sat on the grass, looked up at the starry sky, and was lost in thought. In the light footsteps, Wang Tianzong's figure walked directly into the manor. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 605. Under the night sky, the manor was completely clear. Without the dense fog, the hazy starlight sprinkled down, and the inside and outside of the manor seemed extremely clear. When Wang Tianzong walked into the manor, the last wisp of white fog in the corner had turned into a silk thread, slowly swimming in the direction of Li Tianlan. As he approached, the white thread obviously paused, and then continued to float toward Li Tianlan. Wang Tianzong's pupils contracted slightly for a moment, but he did nothing. Qin Weibai had already stood up. She calmly looked into Wang Tianzong's eyes, and her eyebrows were full of coldness. The Samsara Palace was destroyed. But the goddess was still the goddess. She stood there, and there was still a kind of coldness and arrogance that no one dared to blaspheme. But Wang Tianzong clearly saw a touch of blankness deep in Qin Weibai's eyes. There was only blankness. The master of Samsara Palace, who forced that sword move, was doomed. More than half of the 12 super masters of the Samsara Palace were dead or injured. Even Flaming Fire's life and death were uncertain. Countless core masters, core strength, and a large number of trump cards of the Samsara Palace were revealed. The master of Samsara Palace might have succeeded. Tomorrow might be a new era. But everything of the Samsara Palace would be buried at the end of the old era, and completely destroyed with her success. Under such circumstances, Qin Weibai only showed blankness. Wang Tianzong didn't even see the slightest anger and hatred in her eyes. Her blankness was not even because of the destruction of the Samsara Palace. Wang Tianzong felt that Qin Weibai was completely at a loss because of some concerns, or the blankness after the shadow suddenly disappeared. Wang Tianzong suddenly felt that she was a little strange. She narrowed her eyes and said calmly, "Who are you?" "Me?" Qin Weibai was obviously stunned for a moment. She thought of the sword light just now and the master of Samsara Palace. She suddenly became a little angry, and her voice became sharp. "Why do you question my identity?" "I didn't question anything," Wang Tianzong said blandly, "it's just that you seem to have lost yourself." "I am me." Qin Weibai said coldly, "Do you need me to introduce myself?" Wang Tianzong smiled and shook his head. Tonight, he stood at the unprecedented peak of the dark world. It seemed that even his character had become calm and gentle. He withdrew all his killing intent and walked past Qin Weibai to the villa where Li Tianlan was recuperating. Qin Weibai followed him quietly without saying a word. Li Tianlan was still unconscious. His military uniform had been taken off, and his upper body was naked. The huge wound on his chest had stopped bleeding, and the elites of Samsara Palace were carefully cleaning the wound for him. Dongqing Rushi lay beside him, leaning close to Li Tianlan. She seemed to have fallen asleep. Wang Tianzong watched quietly. He suddenly reached out and touched Li Tianlan's wound, feeling the sword intent in it. The movement of the sword appeared clearly in his mind, and the wound appeared clearly in front of him. He looked at it for a long while and muttered to himself, "This move is really gentle." Qin Weibai looked at Wang Tianzong expressionlessly. She did not stop him from coming in, nor did she stop him from touching Li Tianlan. From beginning to end, she was indifferent. Wang Tianzong finally turned around, looked at Qin Weibai, and asked, "Aren't you afraid that I'll kill him?" Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes. She had been a little confused, but suddenly there was an indescribable coldness in her. This was a feeling that Wang Tianzong was very familiar with. He didn't meet Qin Weibai much, but almost every time, he felt this coldness from Qin Weibai. Wang Tianzong shook his hand. The sword energy was flowing in his palm, which was extremely delicate. "Do you dare?" Qin Weibai suddenly asked. The sword energy in his palm suddenly stagnated. Wang Tianzong raised his eyebrows. "I don't dare." "Do you dare?" Qin Weibai asked in an indifferent tone. Wang Tianzong fell silent. Qin Weibai stopped talking. In any case, Li Tianlan was the marshal of Zhongzhou state at this time. When the devil troop attacked this manor, Li Tianlan could die. Because there was no evidence that the devil troop belonged to the Wang family of Beihai. But now, Wang Tianzong was here, and Li Tianlan must not die. In a sense, from the moment Wang Tianzong entered this manor, Li Tianlan and Dongqing Rushi were really safe. Passing through the battlefield and the ruins, Wang Tianzong seemed to be moving forward step by step, but in fact, he was constantly retreating. "You won." The mountain-like killing intent and sword energy surged around Wang Tianzong for a moment. He became quiet again. "We didn't win, and you didn't lose." Qin Weibai shook her head. Maybe the ending was doomed from the beginning. Wang Tianzong didn't speak. He looked at Li Tianlan, who was lying on the bed with a pale face, with some regret in his eyes. There were many kinds of regrets. And all the regrets seemed to gather in Wang Tianzong's eyes at this time. He raised his hand and put it down again. He was silent for a long time. Qin Weibai, who had been standing in silence, watched him become quieter and quieter, and finally said, "See the guests out." Two elites of Samsara Palace came over and bowed slightly in silence and respect. Wang Tianzong shook his head and turned to leave. His figure paused at the door and suddenly said, "I will get what I want." "You have got it." Qin Weibai said calmly, "And we have got what we want." The new era. From now on. Wang Tianzong was silent for a while and nodded. In the final sword move, both sides paid a heavy price. No one lost, no one won. In many cases, this was the world. What could they do even if they were unwilling? He walked out of the villa. Under the extremely clear night with the fragrance of flowers and plants, the unconscious Li Guangtu and Li Shi were carried back. Lin Fengting was also lying on the stretcher. His eyes were open, and he was still awake. Wang Tianzong looked calm and didn't even look at Li Guangtu. He walked to Lin Fengting and suddenly asked, "How is it?" "I won't die." Lin Fengting's tone was quiet, and his smile was still free and easy. Wang Tianzong looked at his eyes and said softly with emotion, "I can't go back." Lin Fengting nodded and said, "Yes. From now on." He looked at Lin Fengting and said softly, "It's better to be a stranger. If I can't, I won't." Lin Fengting took over his words, and his voice was extremely decisive. Wang Tianzong smiled. It was better to be a stranger. His figure walked out of the manor and said quietly, "It's best." The two brushed past each other and went in the opposite direction. In the villa, Qin Weibai came out to greet him. She bowed to Lin Fengting and said softly, "Thank you, sir." Lin Fengting took a deep look at her and shook his head. In the silent and quiet villa, Li Tianlan was still lying with his eyes closed. Lin Fengting struggled to get up from the stretcher, walked to Li Tianlan, and looked at him for a long time. When he really wakes up, what will happen? Lin Fengting suddenly asked. "I don't know." Qin Weibai shook her head, and her eyes became complicated and a little uneasy. "The real doomsday is nothing more than that." Lin Fengting muttered to himself. "The doomsday?" Qin Weibai was a little confused. "His, yours, and maybe everyone's." "The real doomsday," Lin Fengting said softly, and his eyes gradually became a little blank. Mount Dibbing. The sun was shining brightly. In the extremely quiet palace, Summer Solstice quietly watched everything happening on the screen. In the Beihai Corps in Eastern Europe, countless signals locked on Wang Tianzong and Mormons. Summer Solstice did not see the sword tear the sky, but she completely saw the sword shatter the whole city. Infinite brilliant light lingered on the screen and eventually disappeared. She saw Wang Tianzong, who was almost unscathed, appear in the city of Mormons. She saw Wang Tianzong kill Tyrant with a wave of his hand and take back the indefinite grace. She saw Wang Tianzong's figure moving forward, getting farther and farther away. In the quiet hall, Summer Solstice stood quietly like a statue. After an unknown period of time, her somewhat numb body slowly moved. The picture on the screen had been fixed. It was fixed on the screen without the Sword Emperor. Summer Solstice slowly turned around. Her expression was only calm, without any fluctuation. She opened the door of the palace, and the bright sun shone down. Summer Solstice raised her head and looked straight at the scorching sun in the sky. In the dazzling light, her eyes were red, and she did not know when she had burst into tears. Sparkling tears rolled down her cheeks. Summer Solstice walked out of the palace and into the depths of Mount Dibbing. Along the way, countless guards bowed at the same time when they saw her. Summer Solstice was in a trance. She passed by the World Palace. She boarded the stage of Formidable Person. The dense steps went all the way up and seemed to extend to the end of the sky and the sea. Summer Solstice took out her mobile phone and dialed a number. "Madam," on the phone, a respectful voice sounded. "Prepare a special plane." Summer Solstice's voice was soft and ethereal. "Okay." On the other side of the phone, the respectful voice answered, "Madam, where are you going?" Summer Solstice held the phone and looked to the north. "To Snow Country." She looked to the north, and an imperceptible sharpness was slowly gathering in her eyes. The woman who had amazed an era and might even become a female chosen one stood in front of the steps near the top of the stage of Formidable Person. She reached out her hand. The sword intent spread. Crack, the thick stone steps suddenly collapsed. The clear sound of the sword resounded throughout Mount Dibbing. The quaint long sword flew out of the stone steps and fell into Summer Solstice's white palm. Summer Solstice lowered her head and looked at the long sword in her hand. Her eyes were full of affection. More than 20 years ago, it was this sword that opened a path for the Wang family of Beihai in a difficult situation. In the case of treason more than 20 years ago, it was this sword that directly smashed the murderous weapon of the Li family, Infinite Sky. More than 20 years ago. In the past countless years, the Wang family of Beihai had a legend about this sword. But in this era, this was Summer Solstice's sword. The famous sword of Beihai. Autumn Water. Summer Solstice held the sword body of Autumn Water and turned to leave. Summer Solstice's personal maid knelt in front of the first step of the stage of formidable person. She held a mobile phone in her hand. "Madam," the maid whispered, "it's a call from His Majesty." Summer Solstice was stunned. She held the sword in one hand and took the mobile phone in the other. The moment she took the mobile phone, she hung up. A text message was sent quickly. "Stay at home and wait for me." Summer Solstice lowered her head and looked at the screen, looking at the typo on the screen. Autumn Water trembled slightly. She was silent, and her eyes turned red again. Chapter 606. The city in the distance gradually fell silent in the darkness. The cold wind howled in the north of Snow Country, and the waves on the seaside were surging. On the road not far from the seaside, the first batch of Snow Country soldiers who had withdrawn from Mormons had gradually gone away. The noise on the coastline in the wilderness disappeared, and everything became quiet again in the night. The usual silence did not last long before it was completely broken. A very clear shadow appeared on the sea level in the distance. The shadow rode the wind and waves in the ocean and approached quickly. The loud roar kept getting clearer. In the vague darkness, one after another behemoth rushed from the deep sea to the shoal. The bright and dazzling searchlights covered the whole coast. In the blazing white light, the star flag of Zhongzhou State was fluttering in the wind, which was extremely cold. One after another, the latest landing ships of Zhongzhou State rushed directly to the beach. The drones took off from the deck of the landing ships and flew into the night sky. In the noise, a large number of elite soldiers of Zhongzhou State rushed up with supplies. The chaotic and orderly crowd continued to extend on the beach, and more people appeared. A simple base had taken shape in the shortest time. A middle-aged man in a major general's military uniform looked around in the crowd with a serious expression. From the moment they landed until now, it had been quiet all around. The entire Snow Country seemed to have no reaction to their arrival. The Major General frowned. His figure suddenly stood somewhere on the beach and muttered to himself, "It's a little abnormal." "General, most of the military forces of Snow Country are involved in Mormons. After Jia Delin's death, the military of Snow Country is even more chaotic. Even if they can find us, they should not be able to react in a short time," a colonel said calmly. The Major General nodded and looked as usual, but the muscles at the corners of his eyes were twitching slightly. "In this case, report the local situation to General Nan immediately. Go north to support Mormons, or go south to join Marshal Dongcheng, and ask him to make a decision early." The colonel froze for a moment and looked at the Major General with a strange look in his eyes. The Major General waved his hand impatiently, and his body became more and more stiff. "Go." He pointed to another officer. "You go together." The two officers looked at each other for a moment, then turned around and walked toward the landing ship that was about to board. The Major General stood there quietly until the two subordinates walked away. Then he quietly lowered his head and looked at the beach under his feet. The waves rose and fell, the tides rose and fell. Under the night sky, the beach was suffused with a kind of deep darkness. In his line of sight, all the fine grains of sand seemed to be trembling slightly with a subtle and exquisite power. It looked light, but it carried a sharpness that far exceeded the limits of the Major General's imagination. The Major General narrowed his eyes and observed his surroundings. He silently took a step back. A black cloth appeared in front of him. A subtle flow of air surged around his body, and soon, the silhouette of a human figure appeared on the beach beneath his feet. The Major General buried the black cloth well, squatted down quietly, and reached out to flatten the sand. A pale face emerged from the mud. His eyes were tightly shut, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Amidst the bustling voices around him, the Major General's expression became extremely complicated. The moment he boarded the landing ship, he sensed a subtle but extremely sharp sword chi. This extremely sharp sword energy covered the whole beach, and countless grains of sand rose and fell gently under this killing intent. Although the rank of the Major General was not high among the higher-ups, his strength at the peak of the thunder-shocking realm was definitely not weak. He came here by following the sword energy scattered on the beach. Even he did not expect that he would step on a corner of the black robe. To be precise, it was a palm. The palm of the owner of the face in front of him. The Major General looked at him with a complicated expression. The aura of the unconscious figure was extremely weak, and his vitality was almost constantly flowing from his body. But his vitality was so strong that he had been in this state for a long time, but he had never died. The Major General opened his mouth and muttered to himself, "You're really lucky." He didn't know why the other party was in a coma here or even submerged in sand, nor did he know what he had experienced. But these were not important. What was important was that what he saw in front of him was absolutely a great contribution to him. What he needed to do was very simple. It was so simple that he only needed to move his hands and turn the person in front of him into a real corpse, and then he could rise to the top in one step. It was just killing a person. He had done it too many times. How hard was it? The Major General's fingers touched his waist little by little. He held the special military bayonet of Zhengzhou State tightly in his hand. He was short of breath, and his eyes were red with excitement. It was like facing a pie that fell from the sky. They logged in here. The so-called senior officer was the first to log in and inspect the surrounding environment. Then he saw the other party submerged in the sand. What a coincidence! The other party's body was still under the sand. At this moment, no one could see his face except from this angle. He only needed to pierce the other party's heart through this layer of sand with the general bayonet. What was waiting for him would be endless glory, splendor, and wealth. The military bayonet in his hand fell down. A pistol that had obviously been specially modified and overly strengthened was pressed against the back of his head. "What are you doing?" A cold and hard voice sounded behind him. It was not an inquiry, but an interrogation. The Major General's body suddenly became stiff. His body turned around bit by bit, and in a short period of time, his mind had already become a blank. "General Nan." "No. Commander Nan, I'm asking you." The pistol was pressed against the back of his head, and the hard voice was filled with killing intent. "What are you doing?" "I found a wounded person of unknown origin. His identity is very suspicious, so you sent away your two subordinates to observe alone? You don't know him." Commander Nan's voice became colder and colder. The Major General broke out in a cold sweat. His face never turned around, but his eyes had become calm. "Yes, I haven't seen him," and, bang! A loud roar like a cannon suddenly sounded in Commander Nan's hand. The loud sound rolled across the whole beach with a sound wave. The Major General's head and even his upper body were completely blown up. Blood and minced meat splashed out under the night sky, with extreme blood and violence. The soldiers who were busy carrying military supplies from the landing ship were stunned. Not only the soldiers, but even several middle-level and high-level officers around Commander Nan were stunned in place. "General Nan." "No, Commander Nan, what do you mean?" A senior colonel looked at the Major General whose upper body was blown up dully, and his face turned red. "Major General Qin Haiyang, the commander of the 9th Fleet of the Beihai Corps." At this moment, nearly half of the people who landed on this beach were elites of the 9th Fleet of the Beihai Corps. No one could have thought that their commander would be shot in the head as soon as the fleet landed. How could this be a headshot? It was simply a dismembered corpse. Isn't the meaning very clear? Commander Nan turned his head and looked at him expressionlessly. "What don't you understand?" In the darkness, the tall man's face was hard and cold, and his eyes were shining like a wild lion's. Covered in blood, he played with the pistol in his hand, looking more and more dangerous. The senior colonel who questioned him turned redder and redder, but he really didn't dare to say anything for a while. His eyes fell on the pistol in Commander Nan's hand, and the fear deep in his eyes became more and more obvious. In a sense, this pistol was as famous as Commander Nan himself in Zhongzhou State. It could be said to be the only pistol in the dark world whose range exceeded most sniper rifles, reaching almost 5,000 meters. It could even be said to be a hand cannon. The pistol was codenamed Jingzhe. Its superpower and super long range could almost only be controlled by Commander Nan alone. This pistol, which took the Dongqing clan several years to build, was completely deformed because Jingzhe had almost no accurate trajectory. As a pistol, it could only be shot once. Its huge shortcomings and great power were two extremes, just like Commander Nan's character. General Nan. The deputy commander of Zhongzhou State Navy Command, Dongqing Wudi's former personal secretary, was born in the Border Control Corps and had a brilliant resume. His brilliant experience made countless people call him Little God of Massacre. However, in more people's hearts, General Nan was called Crazy Nan. If General Nan hadn't been transferred out of the Border Control Corps for serious violations of military discipline in a border conflict a few years ago, he could even be said to be the best candidate to take over as the commander after Dongqing Wudi left the Border Control Corps. As soon as Dongqing Wudi marched into Snow Country, General Nan mobilized the 5th Fleet of Zhongzhou State stationed in the northeast and forcibly enlisted the 9th Fleet of the Beihai Corps to march into Snow Country by sea and land. The 9th Fleet did not resist. At this moment, standing on the land of Snow Country, even if General Nan killed the commander of the 9th Fleet, no one in the 9th Fleet dared to resist. The sky was high and the emperor was far away. General Nan was in power. Who was willing to provoke this crazy? General Nan waved his hand. The sand and sand on the ground flew. The figure hidden under the sand and sand completely appeared in front of everyone. That black robe was completely torn, and the exposed skin of the man in black was full of cracks. The wounds had already turned white, and blood was no longer flowing. The injuries that were enough to kill him only made him faint. His aura was becoming weaker and weaker, but his aura could still be considered stable. General Nan looked down at him, then at the senior colonel who looked a little confused, and sneered. "You entered the thunder-shocking realm at such an old age. I can imagine how bad your aptitude was when you were young. I'm not surprised that you don't know him. But Qin Haiyang doesn't know him." A few years ago, he respectfully called this man his instructor in Yuzhou. Qin Haiyang said he didn't know him. Do you think I believe it? He waved his hand and said forcefully and domineeringly, "Qin Haiyang committed treason and was executed on the spot. This matter can be reported to the army headquarters now. If the Beihai Corps has any different opinions, let your commander come to me in person." In the silence, Commander Nan's tone became furious. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and carry His Highness onto the ship. Treat him immediately, at any cost." Looking at the so-called Highness who was washed here from an unknown sea area, several officers behind General Nan instantly came to their senses. They carefully lifted his body and ran to the landing ship not far away. General Nan stood where he was and glanced coldly at the body on the ground. He casually kicked his lower body away, took out his mobile phone, and dialed a number. The phone was quickly connected. General Nan, who was domineering a minute ago, had become extremely respectful. His voice was still strong. "General, I have landed outside Olin City. Give me a day, no, 15 hours, and we will meet in Kamas." On the phone, Dongqing Wudi's voice seemed to be smiling bitterly. "General, you shouldn't have come." General Nan froze for a moment and didn't know what to say. It was Dongqing Wudi's order for him to come here. General Nan touched his head. "Has the situation changed?" "Nothing." Dongqing Wudi whispered, "It's our concern that makes us confused. In fact, I shouldn't have come." His voice seemed a little embarrassed and annoyed. "Since we are here, Snow Country has no choice." Chapter 607. The sky gradually brightened. The first ray of sunlight shone on the Snow Kingdom's palace. The palace warriors, who had been tense all night, subconsciously relaxed. Tension and fatigue spread to every corner of the palace, and every palace warrior's face was filled with sleepiness that could not be concealed. The palace warriors began to change shifts. In the strict and hurried handover between the two sides, the tense atmosphere was maintained. The tense atmosphere in the palace spread, and the capital of the Snow Kingdom, which used to be extremely prosperous, looked unusually quiet at this time. A serious and cold atmosphere permeated every corner of the city. Under the morning sun, Kamas looked like he was ready to welcome the end of the world at any time. The end of the world never came. But the prelude had already begun. The central hall in the depths of the palace had been temporarily converted into a simple morning hall. Bathed in the morning sun, the body of the Snow Kingdom's President Jia Delin was escorted back to Kamas by several middle-level officers, and entered the Snow Kingdom's palace. At this time, all the high-level officials of the Snow Kingdom in Kamas had arrived. The Prime Minister of the Snow Kingdom, Margarero, dressed in a black formal suit, stood at the forefront, looking at the body covered by the flag of the Snow Kingdom, in a daze. The best forensic doctor in the Snow Kingdom had already carefully observed Jia Delin's body in the shortest time possible. At this time, he stood beside the Prime Minister and reported in a low voice. The cause of death is unknown. The President's body seemed to have suffered an extremely serious freeze at the moment of death. Preliminary observation shows that the low temperature completely sealed all the pores on the President's body in an instant, but his internal organs showed signs of burning. It was very strange, as if someone had ignited a raging fire in his body while freezing the President. The extreme cold and extreme heat worked at the same time, and directly took away the President's life. The forensic doctor said carefully, his voice full of confusion. He had never seen such a bizarre death. Two extreme temperatures acted on a person's body at the same time. This was like the strongest poison in the world, and almost no one could withstand the torture at that moment. You've worked hard. Margarero nodded, his eyes filled with sadness from the bottom of his heart. The relationship between Jia Delin and Margarero was not harmonious. Jia Delin, who was born in the wealthy Violet family, often thought about the rise of the entire Snow Empire, while Margarero, who was born as a commoner, thought about the overall economy of the Snow Empire. Therefore, most of the time, he was more like the spokesperson of the wealthy families of the Snow Empire. But at this moment, with Jia Delin's strange death, all the grudges had been put down. The strong man who stood at the commanding heights of the regime suddenly collapsed. The sky above the snow country seemed to have lost a solid barrier all of a sudden. Wind and rain mixed with fierce momentum whistled over at the same time. Even Margarero could not adapt to such a change in a short period of time. Until the next election, he would bear the pressure of the President as the Prime Minister. How could it be so easy to take the power of the President during a time of war? Margarero thought for a whole night, but he still could not figure out the future path of Snow Country. You are the best forensic doctor in Snow Country. The Prime Minister looked at the forensic doctor, who was no longer young, and said calmly, I believe in your professional abilities. We must find out the cause of President Jia Delin's death as soon as possible. This is a political mission, understand? The forensic doctor nodded with a determined expression. The Prime Minister looked at him for a long time, and then sighed softly. The war broke out too suddenly. Snow Country started the war with absolute superiority, but no one had expected such an ending. As the President, Jia Delin died inexplicably on the way to Reki City. Until now, the reason had not been found out. Now everyone in Snow Country was angry, and Dongqing Wudi's army was still ready to move. All of this made Snow Country's momentum continue to decline. The decision to completely abandon Mormons was personally issued by Margarero. At least in his eyes, with Jia Delin's death, whether Snow Country could survive was a problem, not to mention winning the war. What Snow Country needed most now was to recuperate. The corner of Margarero's mouth moved. Before he could speak, a military staff officer had rushed into the hall. He lowered his voice and said something quickly in Margarero's ear. Margarero's face kept changing. After a long time, he took a deep breath and seemed to have made up his mind. Everyone. He calmly glanced at all the high-level officials in the hall. I just received the news that Dongqing Wudi's Black Dragon army set off 2 hours ago, and 15 minutes ago, Oris fell. Boom! The atmosphere in the whole hall almost completely exploded in an instant. The news that Dongqing Wudi had stopped to rest a few hundred miles away from Kamas had made them a little relaxed. But when the news came, everyone realized that Dongqing Wudi really had no scruples and was determined to attack Kamas. Oris city was less than 100 kilometers away from Kamas. In other words, maybe in a few hours, the Black Dragon army's vanguard would reach Kamas. Destruction was close at hand, and no one could remain calm. There's another news. Margarero said blandly, the military has confirmed many times that 2 fleets of the Zhengzhou State Navy have landed in Orinda City, with about 30,000 people. That's the only way to retreat from Mormons. At this moment, the 30,000 elites of these 2 fleets have defeated about 60,000 of our retreating troops. And the other side still has no intention of giving up the fight. The other side is led by General Nan of Zhengzhou State. In other words, we can't count on the reinforcements that we hope to withdraw from Mormons to support Kamas. There was a lot of discussion. In the extremely noisy environment, the faces of the high-level officials of Snow Country finally showed unconcealable panic. Mr. Prime Minister, what do you suggest? You can say it now. In the chaotic discussion, an old marshal of Snow Country who had retired stood up and looked into Margarero's eyes. Suggestion. We can't resist. What else can I suggest? Everyone can guess what will happen to Snow Country in the future. Maybe it will be miserable, but this is the only way. No matter how miserable it is, it's much better than Snow Country not existing, isn't it? Margarero smiled bitterly. The old marshal didn't speak, just looked at him quietly. Very good. Margarero shrugged and said, since no one wants to say it, I'll say it. Everyone, the only way to survive so far is to sue for peace, just like, he turned on the screen in the hall. The Eastern European news was showing the carnival in Reki City. Prime Minister Riker of Wulan State was giving a speech. Margarero looked at Riker on the screen with indifferent eyes. Just like Prime Minister Riker. The old marshal took the initiative to speak. No. Margarero shook his head. He stared at Riker on the screen, as if he could clearly see the fear and despair in the depths of his heart. I'll sue for peace, but I won't be like him. Margarero laughed. But Dongqing Wudi's conditions must be very harsh. The old marshal frowned. Yes. Margarero nodded and said in a cold voice, so we don't need to talk to Dongqing Wudi. At this stage, we have a better choice. He was silent for a moment and said, I've sent someone to Mormons. The atmosphere in the whole hall froze for a moment. The old marshal's face changed slightly, and he said in a dry voice, Wang Tianzong. We're going to the Wang family of Beihai. Judging from his performance tonight, he and his Wang family of Beihai are qualified to cover Snow Country under his sharpness. Margarero's tone was calm. The old marshal was silent for a long time and finally did not speak. The high-level officials of Snow Country did not speak either. Margarero looked in the direction of Mormons with calm eyes. The Wang family of Beihai would never refuse Snow Country's surrender. They belonged to Zhengzhou State. But in many cases, they were completely different from Zhengzhou State. For Snow Country, this was the best choice. For the Wang family of Beihai, they had the entire Snow Country and would also occupy a great initiative in Eastern Europe. Perhaps their strength would not be stronger than Li Tianlan in an instant, but in the future of Eastern Europe, the Wang family of Beihai with Snow Country would also have great influence. In a sense, between the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai, whoever could absorb their own territory faster could become the future king of Eastern Europe. Margarero was in a daze. He had begun to think about the difficult steps to survive under the wings of the king. When he left the manor and returned to Mormons, Wang Tianzong's aura had calmed down. The extremely powerful sharpness between heaven and earth was everywhere. His arms, which were hidden in the wide sleeves of his robe, were trembling slightly. The voices of surrender continued around him. Those who did not choose to kneel also stayed where they were. They seemed to have lost all hope and did not even want to think about retreating. Wang Tianzong watched all this quietly. The elites of the Beihai Corps gathered in his sight and walked over. All he could feel in their eyes was almost fanatical worship. Wang Tianzong suddenly felt very tired. He raised his arm reluctantly and whispered, "Gather, we." The roaring sound of the rotors interrupted his words. A helicopter of the latest model of Snow Country rushed directly into the battlefield. Wang Tianzong narrowed his eyes and looked at the helicopter in the air. His eyes were playful and he was silent. The helicopter barely chose a relatively flat area to land. The hatch opened. A general of Snow Country rushed down against the strong airflow of the helicopter's rotors and came to Wang Tianzong. "Your Majesty," the general of Snow Country stopped less than 5 meters away from Wang Tianzong and bowed deeply. "What's the matter?" Wang Tianzong raised his eyebrows. "The Prime Minister has something very important to discuss with you. If your Majesty has time, can you?" "I don't have time." Wang Tianzong interrupted the general of Snow Country and said calmly, "I don't want to see your Prime Minister either. If Margarero really has something important, let him come to see me." He walked past the general and went to the Beihai Corps. The general seemed a little surprised. He hesitated and said, "Your Majesty, the Prime Minister is very sincere." "Then let him come to see me." Wang Tianzong nodded and kept walking. "Where are you going?" The general smiled bitterly. Wang Tianzong paused and said calmly, "I want to go home. I'm not in the right state these days. I'm seriously stuck and the keyboard has a problem. It's hard to type. The new keyboard will arrive tomorrow. I'll adjust it and try to break out next month." Chapter 608. When everything in the chaos finally calmed down, the last ending also came to an end in a low valley not far from Mormon's. A small team walked through the wilderness under the night sky, carefully searching for something. The instruments in their hands had completely lost their effectiveness, but their movements did not seem lost. A wheelchair floated in the biting cold wind. The wheelchair floated in the air, and inside it sat a thin middle-aged man. The man was afraid of the cold, and his body was wrapped in thick cotton clothes. Most of the time, he did not speak. His deathly still eyes clearly could not see anything, but the entire team followed the direction he pointed. Southwest, the blind man in the wheelchair coughed violently for a while and raised his hand with difficulty. Another 500 meters. The silent team turned around at almost the same time. As the wheelchair floated in the air, the man in the wheelchair coughed even more violently. "Lin Su, how are you?" A white-haired old man under the wheelchair looked up at the wheelchair in the air with an anxious look in his eyes. He had been keeping the wheelchair afloat, so he could clearly sense Lin Su's physical condition. "I'm fine." Lin Su shook his head and laughed in a hoarse voice, "Second uncle, go higher." The old man's arm moved slightly. Lin Su's voice rang out again, "A little higher." The old man gritted his teeth and controlled the wheelchair to continue rising. Lin Su closed his eyes and sensed for a while, then said softly, "Turn left, 300 meters away." Now that he had a precise location, the old man relaxed a little. He immediately lowered the height of his wheelchair. The wheelchair landed on the ground. Lin Su was sitting in it. His face was red, but his whole body was cold. "Why do you and Fengting value this woman so much?" The old man frowned as he looked at his nephew, who clearly did not have much time left. His tone was complicated. "It's not that I value him." Lin Su panted heavily, and his voice became more and more labored. "It's karma. I can see the karma on her. In the next hundreds of years, this will be the key to the Lin clan's continued prosperity. Big Brother believes in my karma, so the Lin clan appeared in Mormons. Are you sure the cause and effect you speak of is with the woman you're looking for?" The old man looked at the Lin clan, and there was a different emotion in his tone. I remember that the cause and effect you mentioned was Qin Weibai. And Qin Weibai is in Mormons. That's what I find the most strange. Lin Su shook his head. As the metaphysics grandmaster of this generation of the Lin clan, he was not as famous as Xian Xuanzi and great master Wu Wei in Zhongzhou state, but in the hearts of the people inside the Lin clan, he was equally unfathomable. However, at this moment, his thin face showed an unconcealable confusion. What I saw at first was karma, and Qin Weibai was part of it. But I can't see through the master of Samsara Palace. Her fate is related to the general trend, but her karma is not in the general trend. The old man frowned. He had a confused look on his face. He was the uncle of Lin Su and Lin Fengting. He left the headquarters of the Lin clan more than 20 years ago and had not been heard from for many years. If it were not for the changes of the Lin clan in Mormons and the change of the patriarch, it was estimated that he would not return to the Lin clan in this life. With the changes of the Lin clan, more and more old people who had left the Lin clan for many years were returning. At this time, listening to the so-called general trend and cause and effect that his nephew said, he instinctively felt that there was something he did not like. The old man shook his head and muttered to himself, "It's good to avoid the world. It's relaxing. Many old guys in the clan think so. How difficult it is to really stand aloof from the world. The Lin clan can do it now because it has the strength now. But nothing will always change. The one in Beihai is already supreme. If the Lin clan doesn't move, how can there be real freedom in the future? Second uncle, you may not like the chaos in the clan now, but all this is for the stability of the Lin clan in the future." Blood gushed out of Lin Su's mouth. He wiped it casually, and his eyes were a little fanatical. "I can see the cause and effect, but I can't see through it. But it doesn't matter. It's good to find her tonight." 150 meters to the right. The team continued to move forward. The old man sighed and patted Lin Su on the shoulder. "Take care of yourself. It's just a life. Every minute I live is worth it. Don't worry about it. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page." Lin Su smiled, and a strange light flashed in his dead eyes. "Our current direction may be the direction of the Lin clan in the future. I'm not as optimistic as you are. You saw that sword. How good can the result of the person who made that sword be?" "Wang Tianzong." The old man shook his head and suddenly said, "How is Wang Tianzong's current state after that sword? I don't know martial arts. How do I know what will happen?" Lin Su shook his head with a smile and said calmly, "But no matter what, people have to fight for their own lives." Fight for their own lives. The old man narrowed his eyes thoughtfully. After a long search, the team finally stopped. Lin Su, who had calmed down a little, became excited again. He pushed the wheelchair forward quickly. The lush vegetation in front of him was completely crushed. In his sight, a slender woman in black curled up on the ground, trembling slightly. The armor on her body had been completely broken. Her body was no longer bloated. At this moment, she curled up on the ground, looking extremely delicate. Lin Su pushed the wheelchair closer to her. The woman seemed to notice something. Her body barely stabilized, and a voice sounded in Lin Su's ear, which was very faint. Lin Su struggled hard, fell off the wheelchair, and approached the woman. At this moment, he finally heard the woman's voice, which was almost a whisper. "It hurts," she said in a trembling voice, but tears poured out of her eyes as if they were out of control. Her willpower struggled in the trance and eternal darkness. She remembered the sword that pierced his heart in the snow that year. He said it really hurt. It turned out to be really painful. It really hurt. Lin Su looked at her quietly, with a somewhat complicated expression. Her body curled up hard, as if trying to protect herself, but the vitality in her body was flowing away crazily like a broken dam. The sword light had passed, but the willpower that entered the transcendent realm had completely entered time and space. Lin Su was very close to her. He looked at the man's body curled up, half of his face buried in the soil, and the half of his face that was revealed after the man's mask was broken, revealing the side of his face that was incomparably exquisite and perfect. The uncontrollable willpower kept surging. With memories that seemed to be from a lifetime ago, Lin Su saw countless pictures, gratitude and resentment, love and hatred, magnificent and sentimental. In the other party's memory, he finally understood something. Lin Su smiled. His smile was a little dim, but it looked extremely peaceful. He quietly looked at the master of Samsara Palace, whose vitality was constantly flowing away, and whispered, "It turns out that you are the real cause and effect." For the Lin clan, Qin Weibai was cause and effect, so was Li Tianlan. But all causes and effects were related to the general trend. Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan, the Lin clan, the Wang family of Beihai, everyone had cause and effect with this world. But the master of Samsara Palace did not. She had nothing to do with the whole world or anyone. From the beginning to the end, all her cause and effect was with Li Tianlan. It's all fake. He looked at the master of Samsara Palace and murmured to himself. The master of Samsara Palace could no longer respond. Her body no longer trembled, and the last vitality dissipated in her body. Endless coldness and darkness enveloped her, and her body became stiff. Lin Su seemed to see the real choice. He sat where he was and kept silent for a long time. The pictures that were transmitted directly into his mind by the will of the transcendent realm disappeared. Everything, including vitality, was finally over. It was completely over. The old man, who could be said to be the highest in the Lin clan according to seniority, walked over slowly and said in a low voice, "Go back, she has passed away." At this moment, the old man thought of the sword that tore heaven and earth apart not long ago, and the last words of the master of Samsara Palace. You are all nonentities." The old man never thought that he would see such a proud person finish the last journey of her life and finally die in front of him. He patted Lin Su on the shoulder and wanted to pull him up. Lin Su didn't move. Gaze. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Looking at the lifeless master of Samsara Palace on the ground, he shook his head gently and sighed in a low voice. You won the sword, but you lost. The old man behind him frowned. Lin Su suddenly smiled and said softly, "Second uncle, you haven't come back in these years, so there are some things you don't know about my body." His face turned pale for a moment, and he said slowly, "In fact, it wasn't very good 3 years ago. At that time, my brother found Wang Tianzong for me and wanted to trade an immortality with the Wang family of Beihai to prolong my life. That time when he went out, he met Li Tianlan and the master of Samsara Palace." The old man raised his eyebrows and said in a low voice, "Did Wang Tianzong refuse?" "No." Lin Su shook his head. "But the conditions were too harsh. Sword Emperor hoped that my brother could help him do 3 things. The old man fell silent. Even in the era of heavenly suns, experts at the peak of the invincible realm were the real big shots. Doing 3 things and agreeing to 3 things were 2 completely different concepts. If Lin Fengting had agreed at that time, what the Wang family of Beihai would get in the future would be much more precious than that immortality. My brother wanted to agree at that time, but I refused. My situation actually had little to do with vitality. Even if I got immortality, I would at most linger on for a few more years, which was meaningless. The most important thing was that I knew that I couldn't do anything in the last few years, so I might as well not do it. Then, that immortality fell into the hands of Li Tianlan, who needed it very much at that time. Lin Su's voice gradually became calm. The old man frowned and thought for a moment. Is this the cause and effect you mentioned? It's part of it. When I refused immortality, I didn't see what happened today. I just thought that if I refused, it would be better for the Lin clan. Using immortality for my poor life is a real waste of God's gift. The old man's eyes became deep. At this time, he didn't know why Lin Su suddenly talked about the Wang family of Beihai and immortality. I'm not saying this to regret anything, but now I'm sure of the fact that I saw 3 years ago again. Second uncle, I'm a useless person. If I stay in the Lin clan, I really can't play any role. He reached out and held the palm of the master of Samsara Palace, which had become a little cold. But she can, you. The old man's face changed dramatically. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. An incomparably strong warm wave instantly filled the silent and cold world under the curtain of the night. Starlight shone down from the sky, and the world under the night sky was burning and heating up, with unimaginable mystery and luck. Lin Su's face grew calmer, but his eyes began to burn. Stop! The old man's face changed dramatically, and his voice was high and anxious. In any case, he never thought that they would end up like this after finding the master of Samsara Palace. Lin Su might not have thought of it either, but it didn't matter. What mattered was that he made the right decision at the most appropriate time. Lin Su laughed. His skinny face seemed to gradually fill up. In an instant, he had an indescribable elegance about him. His deathly still eyes gradually became lax. Second uncle, guess what I saw? The old man stared at Lin Su's face. His body trembled slightly. I saw it, Lin Su sighed in a low voice. I saw it was worth it. He held the master of Samsara Palace's palm hard. I'm a flash of fire, the strong warm tide surged and gathered. That was the temperature that could burn the world. The high temperature with a faint vitality completely surrounded the body of the master of Samsara Palace. Lin Su smiled softly, and his body gradually disappeared. Maybe he would be unwilling, maybe he would feel regret, but the moment he got close to the master of Samsara Palace, he really saw all the cause and effect, and he also saw it was worth it. His remaining life turned into a residual flame, with the last heat, and instantly reignited the slight vitality of the master of Samsara Palace. There seemed to be an invisible fire burning in the void. The flame swallowed Lin Su's body, and his last voice sounded. Everyone has to fight for his own life. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 609. Before the morning light came, the night had passed. The sky before dawn was dark and solemn. As if bathed in the darkness of the whole world, he slowly walked to the shore from the sea and looked at the mountain that he had been thinking about day and night, which was now close at hand. The dim lights flickered on the mountain. It seemed to be far away, but it also seemed to be very close. He stood on the shore and watched quietly. After a long time, he gently stepped up to the shining mountain in front of him. The flowers and the moon were silent. The rich fragrance of flowers drifted from the other side of the mountain, filling the whole area with the sea breeze. The fragrance was pleasant. He walked in the floating fragrance and deeply sniffed the smell of the grass and trees around him. His eyes were all calm. The mountain was heavily guarded. He walked to the end of the 3-kilometer-long side road and finally reached the foot of the mountain. The military base that guarded the whole mountain operated day and night. The dazzling lights flickered with the smell of iron and blood, completely illuminating the whole foot of the mountain. He didn't hide his figure and slowly walked over. In an instant, countless dazzling lights shone on him. He stood there, looking straight at the endless lights, without saying a word. The whole base was boiling after a short silence. Countless soldiers rushed out and knelt in front of him. The lights disappeared. The voice that shook the whole mountain rolled through the sky. Your Majesty! Get up! He silently looked at the crowd in front of him. After a long time, he waved his hand and said, You did a good job. He walked forward and casually patted the shoulder of a nearby soldier. Well done. He walked through the crowd unhurriedly and occasionally patted the shoulders or arms of the soldiers around him. This might be the first time for many soldiers of the Beihai Corps to have a close contact with their sword emperor. Countless people stared at his back with fanatical eyes, as if they were worshipping God. He walked through the crowd and looked back at the army that guarded Mount Dibbing day and night. After a moment of silence, he whispered, Thank you for your hard work. Boom! Amidst the uniform sound, countless soldiers seemed to want to kneel down again. He raised his hand. An extremely surging force suddenly gushed out from the incomparably calm heaven and earth. A huge force acted on everyone's body, causing everyone to stand on the spot. He shook his head and said lightly, "Beihai doesn't have this rule." He slowly turned around and walked along the mountain path to the peak. A hazy whiteness vaguely appeared on the horizon. It was extremely weak, but it dispelled the deepest darkness before dawn. Flowers and plants were in full bloom on Mount Dibbing, and the water was murmuring. Countless subtle sounds were transmitted to his ears, like flowers blooming and withering. He stared deeply at every picture he saw, feeling extremely nostalgic. In his decades of life, this mountain had always been the most beautiful world in his eyes. The morning breeze with the smell of the sea blew over. It was midsummer in Zhongzhou State, but the morning wind was extremely cold. His steady footsteps trembled slightly. He clenched his fists hard, took a deep breath, and continued to move upward. The sweet morning air rushed into his throat. When his feet landed, he could no longer suppress the blood that spurted out of his mouth. He coughed violently, and every cough was accompanied by thick blood and broken internal organs. The wind continued to blow. The golden edges of the black costume shimmered, bright and dignified. His hair was losing its luster at a speed visible to the naked eye. It became dim, then white, and finally turned into a pale white without any vitality. In just a few seconds, with the blood he coughed out, the body that was calm and could almost carry the world had been filled with a sense of decay. He tried to stand up and insist on going up the mountain. But in the cold morning wind, his body moved forward against the wind and was finally blown to the ground. He had never experienced such weakness in his life. His body rolled for dozens of meters on the mountain road with an obvious slope, and finally grasped a small tree by the road. The blood was still flowing. He shut his mouth tightly and swallowed all the blood. With an incomparably calm gaze, he struggled to stand up and staggered towards a nearby pavilion. The stone chair in the pavilion was still cold in the middle of the night. He sat on the stone chair, leaning against the pillar behind him, and looked at the distant sky blankly. The hazy whiteness was still at the end of the sky. Not far in front of him was a pool of clear water, sparkling and reflecting the moonlight in the sky. He looked at it quietly and finally closed his eyes. Countless pictures flashed in his mind one by one, fast or slow, and they were unforgettable. The moonlight fell on him softly. He smiled softly, but his eyes were already blurred when he opened them. In the scattered and cold moonlight, he sat in the pavilion, looked up at the moon in the sky, and looked back at his past. In the quiet and cool world, he gently hummed a song with deep affection and melancholy. The silver boat, swaying, bending, hanging in the fluffy sky. What's your name? Summer. Summer solstice, why are you here? I have no home. Uncle Wang brought me here. Oh, my name is Wang Tianzong. Brother, come with me. Your worries, 3322, Lan, stop in my quiet heart. I like the moon, brother, I like you too, call my name. Wang. Brother Tianzong, call your name. Ah, what's your name? Oh my God, what are you doing? Kuangtu, come and see what they are doing, ha 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 ha. You said, how can a person not be lonely when he is in love, and worried when he is in love? Do you like her? Yes. Tell me after you think it through. I like her. Why? Because I like her very much. My luggage, lonely, alone, makes me feel melancholy. Uncle Li will keep an eye on him. The future of Beihai can't be pinned on this. It'll be fine, I'll solve these things. When it's over, let's go on a trip. Fool, you're the patriarch now. People are banished to the border. It's like walking into the 5th season. The day and night are disorderly and harmonious. The tide rises and falls willfully. There's no spring in the dictionary. Tianzong, ahem, he's dead. Li Kuangtu is dead. I'm amazing, right? How is she? Say. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. How is she? Say it. How is she? Your Highness, Madam, are you going to say it or not? Are you going to say it or not? If you don't say it, I'll kill you. It's my incompetence, maybe, trash. A bunch of trash. Get out, all of you. People squander their tears, avoiding the parting that's still in front of them. I dreamed of you just now. Don't talk. Pay attention to rest. It's okay. Be obedient. I'm here. Oh. Sleep a little longer. It'll be okay. Tianzong, if I'm not by your side, don't be silly. You'll always be by my side. Yeah, ahem, ahem. We still have to go on a trip, yes, tomorrow. Let's go tomorrow, okay? Okay, tomorrow. You don't dare to think about tomorrow. I refuse to say goodbye. It's not worth it, you're more important than 2 portions of medicine. But it's really not worth it, if I say it's worth it, it's worth it. My body is already very poor, it's okay. We still have immortality. If I don't let you go, you can't go. Oh. Some people say that every time you say goodbye, there will be a star in the sky, and it will be extinguished. I've entered the invincible realm. That's great. The situation can be stabilized. Yeah, my man is the best. Do you think my newly cultivated flowers look good? You look the best. You're glib. How's your body? Do you feel uncomfortable? Very good. The best. Tianzong, these are the happiest 2 years of my life. When your body is completely stable, we'll go on a trip. Well, I want to go to many, many places. The silver boat, swaying, bending, hanging in the fluffy sky, your worries, 3322, Lon, stop on my quiet heart, you say, how can a person not be lonely when love is deep? When love is strong, you are worried, my luggage, lonely, alone, scattered, makes me feel melancholy, I'm exiled to the border, as if I've entered the 5th season. The day and night are in disorder and harmony, the tide rises and falls willfully, there's no spring in the dictionary, I'm squandering my tears, avoiding the parting that's still in front of me, you don't dare to understand, I refuse to say goodbye, someone said that every time you say goodbye, there will be a star in the sky, and then it will go out. His voice gradually lowered until it was silent. A cold and delicate palm came around his shoulder, silently wiping away the blurriness in his eyes. Wang Tianzong held that palm. Even if he was exerting force, his strength was still extremely weak. I'm back. He whispered. Summer Solstice answered and did not move. Wang Tianzong slowly turned his head. In his sight, there was a face full of tears, pear blossoms in the rain, extremely beautiful. Wang Tianzong looked at her in a daze. This was her most beautiful appearance. He had never gotten tired of seeing it all his life. Sorry, he suddenly smiled, a little bitterly. I still couldn't kill him. He wiped out most of the elites of the Purgatory of Heaven capital in Eastern Europe, wiped out the top experts of the entire dark world, and really hurt deity. But this was not what he wanted. He still couldn't kill him and give Summer Solstice an explanation. It doesn't matter. There will be chances in the future. Summer Solstice wiped her tears and said softly. In fact, there is a chance, but I don't dare to gamble. Wang Tianzong laughed at himself and said, the 13th floor, what the hell is going on? Summer Solstice's voice was a little trembling. 3 days had passed since that night in Eastern Europe. During these 3 days, she had never closed her eyes. Mormon's last sword strike could be said to be eternal, but only Summer Solstice knew what kind of injury Wang Tianzong had suffered in that sword strike. She knew her man very well. As long as there was a little possibility, deity would not be alive. But now deity was not dead, which showed that the situation at that time was very bad. The 13th floor, Summer Solstice said to herself. That sword formation is very complicated. Give me some time to study it, and I can also create a sword formation comparable to the 13th floor. The sword energy of the same origin has different functions. It is to activate and lock, Wang Tianzong recalled carefully, and his white hair swayed slightly in the wind. That can be said to simulate heaven and earth with sword intent. The 13th floor activated that sword strike and locked Mormons at the same time. So that sword strike couldn't be avoided and could only be taken by force. That's all. Summer Solstice looked at Wang Tianzong's white hair in a daze. If that's all, how did you become like this? Wang Tianzong was silent for a while. His tone became a little difficult and helpless. There's also fusion. Sword energy fusion. He smiled bitterly. The sword strike between me and the master of Samsara Palace was just the beginning. That sword strike was really strong and made me use my immortality. But the sword energy of that sword strike didn't dissipate at that time, so, fusion, Summer Solstice's voice was obviously trembling. Yes. Wang Tianzong nodded. The sword energy of the 13th floor has been integrated with my sword energy. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he said slowly, in the past 3 days, all my efforts have been in vain. I can't suppress the sword energy of the 13th floor. The sword energy has taken root in my body. I can still fight, but the more power I use, the more damage the sword energy in my body will cause to me. In a short time, it's hard for me to find a solution. So Li Kuangtu can't die, and I can't kill him. I can kill Tyrant, and Tyrant is nothing to worry about. If I kill Li Kuangtu, Fengting will definitely take action. With the sword intent in my body, if Fengting tries his best, I may not be his opponent. Even if I can win, once Li Kuangtu dies, the Li family will take revenge madly, and there will be internal and external troubles in the clan. Ha! He suddenly coughed violently. Countless bloodlines burst on his body, and blood flowed down his clothes. I still lost, Wang Tianzong murmured to himself, I lost. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, he got the benefits he wanted and broke through to become the chosen one. But he didn't win. If he didn't win, he would fail. I've sent someone to prepare what you need to recuperate. Summer Solstice's face was pale and bloodless. Drops of blood on Wang Tianzong's body were cutting his heart like a knife. Tianzong, what's the best result? It's hard to have the best result. Wang Tianzong hesitated. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Maybe I will recover and can still maintain the current realm, but there will be flaws. I can be regarded as the chosen one, but my state is not good. What's the worst result? Summer Solstice grabbed Wang Tianzong's sleeve hard. The worst result, Wang Tianzong smiled. That's death. When he said this, his tone was extremely calm, without any unwillingness or regret. Actually, I thought about it. Wang Tianzong stood up with difficulty and grabbed Summer Solstice's palm. I'd better not come back for the time being. I'll recuperate outside first. He stared at Summer Solstice's face. I still can't help it. I always want to come back and see you, it's okay. Summer Solstice said softly. Her tone was no longer trembling, and she seemed to have completely calmed down. You can recuperate in peace. I'm at home. Sheng Shao stays in Eastern Europe to negotiate with Snow Country. Wang Tianzong said softly, Snow Country has little room for resistance. In a few days, there should be clear news. The dark world of Snow Country belongs to the Wang family of Beihai in the future. But the situation is not too good. The only good news is that most of the forces in the dark world are no longer a threat to us. But the news of my recuperation must be kept secret. It must be kept secret. Summer Solstice said yes, extremely soft. Wang Tianzong walked forward with weak steps and whispered, I'm afraid my problem can't be solved in a short time. During my recuperation, all the affairs in the clan will be temporarily handed over to Dijiang to deal with. You should keep an eye on it. Dijiang? Summer Solstice was a little stunned and asked subconsciously, why not Xiaoyao? Let Xiaoyao take charge in Eastern Europe. Wang Tianzong's calm voice was filled with deep coldness. Summer Solstice's face kept changing. When Wang Tianzong's will was silent, there was no problem that the young Wang Xingshao could not take over the patriarch's position for the time being. But as Wang Tianzong's younger brother, Wang Xiaoyao was sent to Eastern Europe and Dijiang jumped up. There were too many problems in it. Dijiang and Wang Xiaoyao were both top experts of the half-step invincible realm, that was, the combat capability of the invincible realm. There was no difference in strength, and they were about to break through to the invincible realm. At this time, letting Wang Xiaoyao go to Eastern Europe and Dijiang stay was almost a clear message to the outside world that Wang Tianzong did not trust Wang Xiaoyao. Xiaoyao, Summer Solstice asked cautiously, what did he do? Don't think too much. Wang Tianzong whispered, it's okay. He sighed softly. I just feel a little sorry for you. When I was young, I said I would take you on a trip, until now. In the next few years, I'm afraid I won't have time, you know I don't care about these things. Summer Solstice bit her lip hard and whispered, as long as you're good, I'm good, so you must get better, understand? Of course. Wang Tianzong nodded with a smile and coughed up another mouthful of blood. With the support of the immortality potion, his vitality was still stable, but the sword energy of the 13-story building had been torturing his body and will cruelly, which made him look weaker and weaker. The two did not choose to go to the top of the mountain. Instead, they turned near the top of the mountain and finally entered the most mysterious No. 5 laboratory in Mount Dibbing. The laboratory was located underground. The two doors on the ground had been opened. The dark passage with lights spread out, and no one knew how far it was. This was the place where Wang Tianzong was going to recuperate. Wang Tianzong quietly looked at the passage in front of him and was silent for a long time. In the chaos of Eastern Europe, the whole dark world was withering. Fire-flaming realm, thunder-shocking realm, half-step invincible realm, peak invincible realm, and even the chosen one, after the absolute chaos and glory, everything would be silent. He would also be silent in this passage. No one knew how long it would take, and no one even knew if he would come out again. Wang Tianzong turned his head and looked at Mount Dibbing in his sight. The dawn gradually brightened. The morning sun rose in the distant deep sea. The sun pierced the clouds, and the sky was gorgeous. A new era, he felt the warm sunshine and murmured to himself. No matter what era it is the era of Beihai. Summer Solstice said softly, and her tone was extremely firm. Wang Tianzong turned his head to look at his wife. He gently leaned over, kissed her on the face, and whispered, wait for me. He seemed to be afraid of something. He looked at Summer Solstice's eyes and said seriously, wait for me. I can wait. Summer Solstice smiled. Tears and smiles appeared on her face at the same time. Just don't be too long. Don't be too long. Wang Tianzong did not speak. He just touched his wife's hair, turned around, and walked into the long and deep passage. Summer Solstice stood where she was and looked at his back quietly. The torrent of time washed from the past to the present. She looked at her beloved husband, and the scenes of the past emerged with all the feelings of the past. There was laughter, happiness, and touching. He was satisfied and content with what he had. Beside him, what Summer Solstice felt most was silence and stability. With him in the Wang family of Beihai, what she felt most was silence and stability. Perhaps the things he had been carrying were too heavy, so Summer Solstice had never seen the slightest complacency and arrogance in him. Life was not complacent. Occasionally, she could only feel cautiousness from him. The strength of Beihai, the hegemony of Beihai, and the sword light of the Sword Emperor swept everything. Everything was built on the foundation of caution. He was like the god of the Wang family of Beihai, sheltering everything and blocking all threats from the outside world. For more than 20 years, whether Beihai had returned to its peak or not, the whole Wang family of Beihai seemed to be having a leisurely and happy dream during this short but by no means short period of time. The foolish man never said much. He carried countless things on his shoulders. He cried and was tired, silent, and careful. Summer Solstice was also immersed in this kind of dream for a time. But all the beauty was a dream and eventually became a bubble. Wang Tianzong's figure disappeared in the passage. Summer Solstice looked at the figure before he disappeared. He finally bent down. His hair was white, and his figure was stooped. Summer Solstice stood there, tears gushing out. She woke up from the dream. In the future, the whole Wang family of Beihai would face the cruelty and truth that had been carried by him alone. Summer Solstice didn't know how long it would take. She didn't even know whether it should be longer or shorter. She didn't dare to think about tomorrow. But he still insisted and refused to say goodbye. The door of the No. 5 laboratory gradually closed. Summer Solstice took a deep breath and straightened her body. The sun leaped into the sky. Summer Solstice raised her head and looked at the sky of the new era. The extreme coldness blew over with the wind. The scorching sun hung high, and the whole world was gloomy. This was the new era. It was a world without light. It was a world without dreams. End of Volume 4, end of this chapter, bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 610. In the dim dream, there seemed to be countless voices thinking in his ears. The scene of the dream seemed to be changing every minute and every second. Fragmented information came in messily, and countless voices were still thinking, which made him upset. Li Tianlan rarely dreamed, but once he did, the content of the dream was often strange. Mountains and seas, fire and ice, saber and sword shadows, and the chaotic dream continued. He dreamed of meeting Qin Weibai for the first time in Huading. He dreamed that Dongqing Rushi took his hand and said that she had liked him for many years. He dreamed that Wang Yuetong looked at him with tears in her eyes and asked him why. He dreamed that the lonely mountain in Lin and appeared in the primeval forest where the Li family had been hiding for many years. He even dreamed that countless people wanted to kill him. In a trance, Li Tianlan felt as if he had died again and again. In the heart-wrenching pain, the shadow of the saber and the sword rushed toward him along with the raging fire. The scene changed to the hazy white mist of the manor. He dreamed that Qin Weibai was holding him tightly, the master of Samsara Palace stood beside him, and flaming fire stabbed him in the chest with a saber. In the distance, he vaguely heard Li Guangtu's roar. The night wind messed up the light and shadow. Qin Weibai flew up and rose high in the sky. In the world full of starlight, there was a touch of black and white that tore apart heaven and earth. The sword light was like the sea. Qin Weibai, who flew high in the sky, turned into Dongqing Rushi, Wang Yuetong, and finally into a woman that Li Tianlan did not know. She rushed toward the sword light. Like a moth flying into the fire. Li Tianlan suddenly opened his eyes. The sunlight outside was blocked by the curtains. In the slightly dim environment, Li Tianlan sat up and shook his head. The trance in his mind began to disappear, and everything in front of him became real. This was a bedroom that was luxurious enough to make one's jaw drop. It was not the kind of bedroom that was piled up with countless gold and silver. The bedroom was slightly dark and warm, and there were details everywhere in the bedroom. The warm chandelier exuded a soft light, and the light shone on every corner, giving people a very comfortable visual enjoyment. Li Tianlan's eyes calmed down in the fastest time. He looked around and didn't know where he was for a moment. There was also a natural and rich fragrance floating beside the bed. Feeling the familiar smell, Li Tianlan was lost in thought. The pain in his chest was still spreading little by little. The wound didn't look big, but the damage it caused to his body was beyond his expectation. He didn't know how long he had been in a coma, but now he felt the pain in his chest. It would still take time for the scar to heal. He slowly rubbed his forehead. His mind was in a mess. Countless questions popped up in his head, but suddenly he didn't want to know the answers. Light footsteps sounded outside the door. The door was pushed open, and Qin Weibai, who was dressed in plain clothes, walked in with a delicate bowl in her hands. Li Tianlan looked at her and was stunned. Looking at Li Tianlan, she was also stunned. After a short silence, she smiled and said softly, "When did you wake up?" Her smile was clear and indifferent. There was no surprise in it, but it was filled with boundless affection. I just woke up. Li Tianlan's mind seemed to be a little slow. He slowly moved his body and said, "Where are we?" Yuzhou. Qin Weibai came over and handed Li Tianlan the small bowl with Chinese medicine in her hand. She whispered, "Drink it while it's hot. It's good for your injury." Li Tianlan subconsciously took it and drank the slightly hot Chinese medicine in one gulp. Qin Weibai took out a candy and put it in Li Tianlan's mouth. She looked at him softly, as if she was coaxing a child. Li Tianlan thought about it with the candy in his mouth. His brain had realized the strangeness of things, but his thinking was still a little slow. How long have I been in a coma? 5 days. Qin Weibai handed over a glass of warm water and said, "Compared to us, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. It's a day earlier than expected." Li Tianlan took a sip of water and muttered to himself, 5 days. Yuzhou. Eastern Europe. He held the glass of water, and his arms trembled slightly. Qin Weibai sat down next to him and reached out to hold his palm. She said in a soft and cautious tone, "Don't think too much, Tianlan. It's over. It's over, oh, it's over." Li Tianlan suddenly smiled, a little self-deprecating. The last scene before he woke up was the desperate scene of Wang Tianzonging defeating all the top experts in the dark world. In a coma, it seemed that it was just a dream, and it was over. "What's the result?" he asked, looking at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai hesitated and wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. "What's the result?" Li Tianlan looked at her eyes, which were shining with charming brilliance. There are many kinds of results, and there are also many kinds of uncertain results, specific to individuals and specific to the general trend. Although things have passed, many things are still very chaotic. The specific results have not come out for the time being. Li Tianlan's heart gradually sank, and his chest ached again. He forced himself to calm down and ask slowly, "Did we lose?" "For the moment, we just didn't win." Qin Weibai held Li Tianlan's hand and said softly, "Tianlan, many things involve too much. In fact, there is no winner or loser. This is the case in Eastern Europe. The essence of this chaos is the future and survival. From the beginning, there is no winner. The current result is in line with expectations. The essence is the future and survival." Li Tianlan looked into her eyes. "My future and survival?" Qin Weibai hesitated. Then she nodded. "Yes." Li Tianlan was speechless for a while. He led the Snowdance Corps into Eastern Europe on behalf of Zhengzhou State. It could be said that he participated in everything. But even as a person who experienced it personally, he could not tell how much the chaos in Eastern Europe involved. All the dark forces were deeply involved in Eastern Europe. The murderous weapons were broken, the invincible realm experts were killed, the divine and holy lists were fragmented, and the entire dark world was almost completely withered. The essence of all this was for his future and survival. If those fallen invincible realm experts knew this so-called essence, what would they feel? Li Tianlan held the cup and thought about Qin Weibai's conclusion. A chaotic situation where there would be no victor. It was a chaotic situation for his survival and future. If all the results were in line with expectations, what would happen to Wang Tianzong? What about the master of Samsara Palace, who really planned the chaos? How is the palace master? Li Tianlan suddenly said, "Take me to see her." Qin Weibai looked at him quietly. There was a different kind of emotion in her deep and bright eyes. It seemed to be sympathy, but also something else. Such a gaze seemed to carry a heavy force, pulling his heart down continuously. Li Tianlan waited for Qin Weibai's answer. Qin Weibai did not answer. She took out her mobile phone and handed it to Li Tianlan. "The password is the date we first met," Qin Weibai said. Qin Weibai said with an unnatural look on her face. Li Tianlan entered a string of numbers without hesitation and unlocked the mobile phone. A video that had been played countless times and spread far appeared in front of Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan subconsciously slowed down his breathing and clicked the play button. The picture was silent. But that almost eternal sword light lit up in the extremely distant night sky. That was the sword that put an end to the whole era. The sword broke the sky, tore the city apart, and shortened the distance on the edge of life and death, with an unprecedented bright sword. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. The light burst out completely and became the final ending. Li Tianlan's face gradually turned pale. Through the screen, he could not feel the sword intent of this sword. But in the endless surging colorful light, he could roughly imagine the power of this sword and the price to pay for this sword. An invincible realm expert could not make such a sword. Not even a half-step chosen one. This was the real supreme sword light. It tore the world apart and obliterated everything. This was the last sword move of the master of Samsara Palace in the dark world. She gave up everything without hesitation. When this sword move was made, no matter what Wang Tianzong did, the master of Samsara Palace was bound to die. The so-called bound meant that there would be no accident. Li Tianlan's hand was shaking and could hardly hold the mobile phone. He clicked the screen with his trembling hands several times before pressing the play button again. Over and over again. In the silent picture, the sword light seemed to be the final farewell. Qin Weibai left and then walked in. She held a huge wooden box in her hands and put it beside Li Tianlan. She whispered, "This is for you." Li Tianlan turned his head numbly and opened the wooden box in a daze. The dark giant sword lay in the wooden box. The sun, moon, stars, mountains, lakes, and seas were no longer lustrous. This was Xianyuan Feng. Xianyuan Feng, who belonged to him in the future. Li Tianlan stretched out his hand and gently stroked the blade of the sword. He muttered to himself, "You promised to live. You promised." Qin Weibai lowered her head, and her eyes were slightly red. Is this what she wants? For my survival and future? Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai, and his voice was a little sad. This is what she wants most. Qin Weibai whispered, "It can even be said that this is the whole meaning of the existence of the Samsara Palace." Li Tianlan did not speak. He thought of the hug before the blade pierced his chest again. It was so heavy, so gentle, so reluctant, thousands of words and countless times seemed to be condensed in that hug. At this time, in retrospect, all the emotions at that time were clearly determined. "I'm sorry," a light voice rang in his ears. Li Tianlan closed his eyes and whispered, "Why, she said it before." "There shouldn't be shadows in your sky," Qin Weibai whispered. Li Tianlan opened his eyes, and his eyes were in a trance. At this moment, he remembered the meeting with military counselor in the East Emperor Palace in Huading more than 3 years ago. It seemed that military counselor wanted to tell him something from that time. He said that what the master of Samsara Palace wanted was a sky without shadows. Until this moment. Only then did Li Tianlan realize that what she wanted was his sky without shadows. The chaos had already passed. Sometimes it was vigorous, sometimes it was silent. He did not see any of them. But those sword lights and shadows that belonged to the Wang family of Beihai, Kunlun City, and many other forces, which were always hanging over his head and would fall at any time, finally dissipated with the chaos. His future was only bright. The eternal night of Mormons continued. Yuzhou had ushered in a clear sky. Li Tianlan walked to the bed, opened the curtains, and opened the window. The warm and bright sunshine shone on him. In his sight, there was a clear sky. Li Tianlan thought about the hug quietly. Something in his heart seemed to be quietly breaking, and it disappeared completely with the sunshine. His heart was blank. P.S. The first chapter that I haven't seen for a long time. End of this chapter, bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 611. Qin Weibai looked at Li Tianlan's back quietly. In the bright sunshine, his figure was facing the window, and it was a little dazzling. She looked at the blurred figure and felt lonely. Qin Weibai looked down at her phone. The video played again on the screen had come to an end, and the sword light had disappeared. The era that once belonged to Sword Emperor, Li Kuangtu, Gu Xingyun, Arcis, and many others had officially ended with the complete collapse of this sword light. Everything had become the past. At this moment, Qin Weibai was more sure than anyone that the future world belonged to Li Tianlan. But maybe he would never know what he had lost in that chaos. Qin Weibai felt a little complicated. As the sword light fell, she was still unsure how she felt. She felt relaxed, relieved, and free. She felt as if she had lost all her shackles. Her mind was completely relaxed, but there was no joy or sadness. She was calm and quiet, as if she was gradually losing herself. Li Tianlan seemed to have become her only direction in the world. She walked over gently, put her arms around his waist from behind, and slowly exerted force. "Did you find the body of the palace master?" Li Tianlan patted her palm and asked in a low voice. Qin Weibai shook her head and said nothing. Li Tianlan didn't ask again. That sword light was the strongest sword light he had ever seen in his life, and it was also the limit of his imagination. It was exactly the same as the end of martial arts he saw. When he drove that sword with the peak of the invincible realm, it was hard to say whether the body of the master of Samsara Palace was still there. Li Tianlan's heart ached slightly, and the vast emptiness continued to spread in his heart. All his emotions seemed to be disappearing. The warm sunshine was telling him clearly and cruelly that everything in Eastern Europe had passed away, including the master of Samsara Palace and many people. And the beautiful future built on the bones of Milk Mountain was waving to him. A coma, the transition between the old and the new eras, and the great sense of confusion kept hitting his will. Li Tianlan turned around and held Qin Weibai's body tightly in his arms. The fragrance of nature wafted into his nose. This was the smell he was most attached to and even obsessed with. It was the same feeling when they first met in Huading. It was the same feeling when they snuggled up to each other in the Sky Academy. It was also the same feeling on that dreamlike night. It was the same feeling every time he saw her. Li Tianlan gently kissed Qin Weibai's delicate neck and asked hoarsely, "How are the others?" Qin Weibai's body was a little stiff. Her two small hands subconsciously grabbed Li Tianlan's back and she said softly, "Not good, not bad. Both Li Kuangtu and Li Shi are seriously injured, and they are still in a coma. According to current observation, their foundations have been damaged to varying degrees. However, Li Kuangtu's foundation is broken and then rebuilt. The immortality seal can be said to outshine others in reshaping the foundation, so it is possible for Li Kuangtu to recover. Although this possibility is small and it takes a long time, such a possibility does exist. As for Li Shi, her injury is lighter than Li Kuangtu's, but she should fall from the peak of the invincible realm." Mr. Lin woke up once. He is in the best state at present, but he is also seriously injured. But in contrast, he can recover in the fastest time. In a sense, in today's dark world, Mr. Lin is already the strongest. Li Tianlan gently bit Qin Weibai's neck, under her command. "This chapter is not over. Please turn the page." He shrank his head subconsciously and straightened his body. He whispered, "This is not a good thing." "Yes." Qin Weibai sighed softly. "But it's not too bad." Li Tianlan said, The Lin clan had been hiding from the world. It was a behemoth whose comprehensive strength was almost no weaker than that of the Wang family of Beihai. In this chaotic situation, no matter whether Lin Fengting, as the patriarch, would change his mentality or not, his hiding from the world could not be changed. This was a deep-rooted idea that countless branches of the Lin clan had maintained for many generations. Now that Lin Fengting had become the top expert in the dark world, his identity suddenly became extremely sensitive. If the Lin clan wanted to continue to stand aloof from the world, Lin Fengting could not intervene in anything. After all, the top expert and one of the strongest experts were two different concepts. At this time, any move of Lin Fengting would be magnified thousands of times, and then people would figure out the overall will of the Lin clan. As for the Lin clan entering the secular world, it was also unlikely that it would enter the secular world in a short time. The concept of standing aloof from the world was deeply rooted in the entire Lin clan. Even the most powerful branches in the outside world basically did not have any conflicts with others. No one dared to provoke such a family, nor did they bother to provoke others. Even if Lin Fengting wanted to lead the Lin clan into the secular world, it would take at least one generation to change this idea. Now that the Lin clan had the top expert in the dark world, it could be fearless of everything. However, Lin Fengting's hands and feet were trapped by the deep-rooted idea of avoiding the world within the Lin clan. This also meant that even if Lin Yuxian developed in Zhongzhou state, the Lin clan could not give him too much support. After all, once the Lin clan showed certain tendencies, it would be followed by countless roping in and suppression. Whether the Lin clan could bear it or not, Lin Fengting was unwilling to let the Lin clan become the center of trouble. No matter what happens to the Lin clan, I will handle it well. Qin Weibai touched her neck that had been lightly bitten, and her face was slightly red. A simple and natural ring on her hand reflected misty colors in the sun. This was originally part of the original deal. You will handle it well? Li Tianlan fixed his eyes on Qin Weibai's ring, and his eyes slightly narrowed. He did not know this ring, but he clearly remembered that this ring had been worn on Lin Fengting's hand before. This is the token of the patriarch of the Lin clan. Qin Weibai handed her hand to Li Tianlan and whispered, I am now the acting patriarch of the Lin clan, and I have been tacitly approved by the largest branches of the Lin clan. With Mr. Lin's support, I will soon take over everything and handle everything well. Li Tianlan looked at the ring in Qin Weibai's hand with a dull face. The patriarch of the Lin clan. Qin Weibai. He didn't know about such a deal, so when the two words were combined together, he only felt crazy. Was the Lin clan crazy, or was Lin Fengting crazy? He handed the Lin clan to you? Li Tianlan's mouth moved, and he asked incredulously. It's escrow. The time limit is about 20 years. The specific situation depends on the growth of the next heir of the Lin clan. Qin Weibai explained briefly. So. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai. Will you belong to the Lin clan in the future? No. Qin Weibai shook her head gently. I have always belonged to you. And the Lin clan now belongs to me. Li Tianlan smiled bitterly. The change of the supreme power of the Lin clan was destined to be just the beginning. The extremely chaotic situation would end. Please turn the page if this chapter is not over. After that, the dark world, which was being shuffled, seemed to return to the original point. No one knew how many things would happen in the following time. How about Eastern Europe? Li Tianlan asked. President Li Huaqing returned to Zhongzhou state from Eastern Europe yesterday. Our position in the 5 Eastern European countries is stable. The biggest problem is in Snow Country. At present, everyone, including Zhongzhou state, is talking to Snow Country. However, Snow Country's intention is very clear. They have been contacting the Wang family of Beihai. At present, it seems to be nothing, but when things are really in a stalemate to a certain extent, Zhongzhou state may not be willing to fight with the Wang family of Beihai to the end. It's not that they don't have the strength, but it's unnecessary. But it's different for us. Li Tianlan's voice was a little cold. Qin Weibai nodded. I've arranged some backups, but I don't know if they are useful. As soon as she finished speaking, the text message prompt on her mobile phone rang. Qin Weibai picked up the phone and looked at it, narrowing her eyes slightly. It's useless. She whispered, I just received news that Wang Xingshao, who was responsible for negotiating with Snow Country on behalf of the Wang family of Beihai, was ambushed on his way to the hotel after leaving the palace of Snow Country. The assailant was General Yellencat, a famous general of Snow Country. The general led dozens of trusted subordinates to attack him on Kamas Wissen Street. Together with his 2 deputies, they were killed by Wang Xingshao on the spot. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Qin Weibai's voice continued to ring. He only used 1 sword stroke. Li Tianlan finally turned around. Yellen Cat? He is an expert of the half-step invincible realm and the former marshal of Snow Country. He was demoted because of a command mistake, but he is still one of the few experts in Snow Country. Of his 2 deputies, one is already at the peak of the Thunder-Shocking Realm, and the other has stabilized the Thunder-Shocking Realm and has Thunder Vein. Qin Weibai's voice was quiet. Wang Xingxiao only used 1 sword stroke. Li Tianlan laughed. Only 1 sword stroke. Qin Weibai whispered, 1 sword stroke of the fire-flaming realm. He killed a half-step invincible realm expert with 1 sword stroke, along with a Thunder-Shocking Realm expert at the peak of the Thunder-Shocking Realm and a Thunder-Shocking Realm expert with Thunder Vein. The news of this battle had spread throughout the Dark World in the shortest time. But when all the forces in the world were guessing whether Wang Tianzong was injured in the Eternal Sword Stroke, or to what extent he was injured, the sword light of the Wang family of Beihai had shone again in the Dark World. 1 sword stroke of the fire-flaming realm. But the power of this sword stroke was almost close to that of the invincible realm. All those who had been lucky enough to go to the Wang family of Beihai and overlook the stage Formidable Person of Mount Dibbing should remember the words carved on the stone of Formidable Person. A place where heroes come forth in large numbers. Li Tianlan was silent and did not speak. Qin Weibai was also silent until her cell phone rang again. Qin Weibai looked down at it. Her eyes became a little strange. Tianlan, I received the latest news here. Her voice was subtle. Jiang Shangyu, the vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps, appeared in Reki City. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. He looked at the sunshine outside the window in silence. After a long time, he nodded. It seemed that he was responding to Wang Xingxiao's news, but also to the intelligence of Jiang Shangyu's appearance. He replied, end of this chapter, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 612. Qin Weibai was still a little hesitant. The rise of Wang Xingxiao and Jiang Shangyu was unexpected but also expected. In any case, it was not something that would make people worry too much. It could only be regarded as a new atmosphere at the beginning of a new era. She hesitated because she didn't know how to tell Li Tianlan. For all parties, the chaos in Eastern Europe could be said to be a heavy loss, even a tragic one. This was a chaotic situation with no winner. It was doomed. They were failing in all aspects. Some were unable to recover from the setback, while others were silently healing with heavy losses. Wang Tianzong didn't win. The master of Samsara Palace didn't win. Li Tianlan, who seemed to get the most, didn't win. Qin Weibai had the confidence to deal with a lot of things, but at this time, she felt that the news she was about to speak and the situation she might face next were extremely tricky. It was about Dongqing Rushi's injury. It was the devil troop of the Wang family of Beihai that seriously injured Dongqing Rushi. Wang Yuetong, the little princess of the Wang family of Beihai. She was running around for Li Tianlan in Tiannan. This was destined to be an equally chaotic entanglement. What would Li Tianlan do when he knew? He couldn't give up anything, but he was destined to lose something. The master of Samsara Palace, Wang Yuetong, Dongqing Rushi, such a result was equally tragic for Li Tianlan. Qin Weibai thought quietly, and her face was a little pale. What's wrong? Li Tianlan turned around and looked at Qin Weibai and asked. Qin Weibai shook her head and didn't speak. Li Tianlan didn't care and said softly, go out for a walk. He walked over and naturally took her palm. Qin Weibai walked out with her head down and followed Li Tianlan, extremely docile. The morning breeze blew over the moment the door opened with the light fragrance of flowers. Everything was green and bright. Unlike the bedroom, which was full of modern style and comfortable layout, everything outside was as exquisite and beautiful as an ancient palace. There were flowers and green grass, neat and clean small stone roads, and the clear sound of running water could be heard not far away. Li Tianlan looked at the mottled wall in front of him, but it didn't look old. Instead, it looked extremely vicissitudes. He asked again, where is this? Prince Yong's mansion. Qin Weibai hesitated and whispered. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Before he came of age, he spent most of his life in the Li family's camp built in the primeval forest. However, he was no stranger to Yuzhou. It was just that in the mouth of Li Honghe back then, this bustling big city was like a distant fantasy. He had heard of Prince Yong. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. The mansion was one of the largest and most complete relics of the previous dynasty preserved in Yuzhou. It was said that it had been opened to the public 100 years ago. At that time, it was a very famous scenic spot in Yuzhou. However, it had been sealed for nearly 100 years. Li Tianlan never thought that he would appear here after waking up. He thought of the bedroom he had woken up in. Where is this? Li Tianlan finally turned around to look at Qin Weibai and asked seriously. This is, Qin Weibai hesitated and finally smiled bitterly. This is the property of the Bai family. The Bai family obtained the property rights of the Prince of Yang's residence. In recent years, after the Bai family renovated the residence, they treated it as. She looked into Li Tianlan's eyes and held his hand hard. After the Bai family renovated it, they have made it your wedding house, Li Tianlan murmured to himself. Looking at Qin Weibai's eyes, his heart sank slightly. In the eyes of the Bai family, the bride of the wedding house related to him was naturally Dongqing Rushi. But since he woke up until now, Dongqing Rushi had never appeared. His voice became a little hoarse. Where is Rushi? Rushi is still recovering. Feeling Li Tianlan's cold palm, Qin Weibai bit her lip. She is in a private hospital nearby. Mr. Lin, Li Kuangtu, and the others are all there. I can take you there. Li Tianlan stood there in silence for a long time. He couldn't wait to leave with Qin Weibai. Instead, he was thinking about something carefully. Under the sun, his pale face returned to calmness in the fastest time, and even looked a little indifferent. He sat down in front of a stone table in the garden. How is her injury? He asked in a low voice. Before he passed out, Dongqing Rushi was still standing beside him. He knew that she had the invincible sword move, but he didn't think that Dongqing Rushi could play a big role in the battlefield of the Chosen One. Then who hurt her? How was her injury? I don't know, Qin Weibai was a little confused. Since she came to Prince Yang's mansion, she had devoted all her attention to Li Tianlan. There was no accurate news about Dongqing Rushi, but there were some possible conclusions that countless experts had already come out a few days ago. It is said that the injury is very serious. She looked at Li Tianlan's calm and somewhat indifferent face, and suddenly became a little flustered. But some things couldn't be hidden after all. In Eastern Europe, you were in a coma not long ago. Rushi forcibly pulled out the silence sword, but she couldn't bear the sword intent of the silence sword. Her body was seriously injured, and there is no possibility of recovery at present. If this chapter is not over, please turn the page. She took a deep breath. If there is no accident, she may become a vegetable. The cruel truth was like a knife cutting Li Tianlan's heart crazily. In her sight, Li Tianlan's face was as hard as a rock, without any change. A vegetable, he thought of the little woman who liked to hide in his arms and gently bite his ear. A vegetable, the little woman who said that she had known him for many years and liked him for many years. A vegetable, the little woman who said she would protect him. A vegetable. Li Tianlan pressed his lips tightly. Puff! Dark red blood sprayed directly from his mouth and dyed the stone path red. Tianlan, Qin Weibai rushed over and held him tightly in her arms. There will be a way. Believe me, there will be a way. A vegetable, Li Tianlan's eyes became colder and colder. Why? In that situation, why did Dongqing Rushi choose to pull out the sword? Qin Weibai didn't speak. Why? Li Tianlan asked again. Shortly after you were in a coma, someone attacked the manor and broke Jiang Qinsong's 30-meter mortal world domain. At that time, the only power around us that could protect you was Rushi and silence. I will protect you. A vegetable, Li Tianlan gritted his teeth, and everything in his sight was spinning wildly. He struggled to stand up and whispered, "Who? Beihai. Beihai. Devil troop, devil troop." Li Tianlan thought of the strange red light he had seen on the trial day and didn't speak. "Tianlan," Qin Weibai called out to her. Li Tianlan glanced at her and whispered, "There will be an explanation." He was silent for a while and continued, "There will be." The morning breeze under the sun blew over, and the branches shook with fragrance. The chirping of birds and the clear sound of running water came from afar. Li Tianlan looked at the antique Prince Yang's mansion in front of him. This was his wedding room. But in the wedding room, there might be no bride for a long time, maybe forever. The empty Prince Yang's mansion. The bridal chamber was empty. Li Tianlan lowered his head and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. He whispered, "There will be an explanation." End of this chapter, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 6:13. The morning sun gradually turned into a scorching sun. The sunlight grew blazing hot. The high temperature enveloped the prince's mansion, permeating through the flowers and water. Qin Weibai stood in front of Li Tianlan in a white dress, like a statue that gradually lost its spirit qi. In the quiet environment, Li Tianlan, who had been silent for nearly the whole morning, finally stood up and said calmly, "I'll go and have a look." He paused. Before he could say anything, Qin Weibai had already said considerately, "I won't go." After Dongqing Rushi fell into a coma, there happened to be a high-level conference in Yuzhou recently. Bai Qingqian, who came to Yuzhou for the conference, declined all unnecessary social engagements and spent most of her time running between the hospital and the prince's mansion. She didn't say anything to Qin Weibai. But now that Li Tianlan woke up and appeared in front of Bai Qingqian with Qin Weibai, no matter who Bai Qingqian was, she would inevitably have some ideas when she saw Dongqing Rushi in a coma and then Qin Weibai. Li Tianlan nodded. "Have a good rest." He smiled and said softly, "I'm fine." His tone was cold and emotionless. All the sadness, anger, and murderous intent seemed to disappear with silence. He walked along the path to the gate of the mansion. Countless flowers and plants swayed in the breeze. Li Tianlan pursed his lips tightly. The whole world in his sight began to turn pale. The Bai clan's private hospital was less than 500 meters away from the Prince of Yongqing's residence. Nominally, the hospital belonged to the Bai clan, but in reality, it was collectively built by the giant group. Large amounts of money had been spent, and the most advanced equipment and top-notch doctors had flocked to the hospital. It was no exaggeration to say that any nurse here, if placed in another hospital, would not be inferior to a professional doctor. The hospital was neither too big nor too small. The scenery was pleasant and it was not deserted on weekdays. Some retired big shots of the giant group almost recuperated here all year round. Many times, the collective decisions of the giant group were made here. When Li Tianlan walked into the hospital, due to the gradually rising temperature, several old people who were playing chess under the tree just put away the chessboard and planned to move the battlefield. Both sides came to the elevator almost at the same time. Li Tianlan nodded and looked at the opened elevator. He said in a calm voice, "After you." "Forget it, I'm getting old. I'll just treat standing for a while as exercise. His Highness is busy with urgent matters. You go first, we still have to wait for an old friend." An old man with white hair and beard in a tang suit smiled and looked at Li Tianlan with extremely friendly eyes. Li Tianlan was a little confused. Now he was really not in the mood to be polite, so he nodded and went straight into the elevator. The elevator gradually rose. The old man's lips moved slightly as he looked at the constantly changing numbers beside the elevator. "Old Su, this person is very popular now. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page." An old man carrying a chessboard walked in front of the white-haired old man and said meaningfully. Elder Su, who had white hair and beard but was still full of vigor, was silent for a moment. He smiled and said, "Hot stuff. A few days ago, I heard that he secretly returned to Yuzhou and has been recuperating his wounds. But it doesn't seem like it. Young man, maybe it's because your body is recovering well. The old man caressed the chessboard in his hand and said casually. The chaos in Eastern Europe has become like this. No matter what has been lost, at least in the eyes of others, this person and the Wang family of Beihai have gained the most. My second son is still in Wulan State. I heard that this person has returned to Yuzhou and has called me twice to visit this little highness. Elder Su smiled and shook his head. Unfortunately, today is not the right time. I heard that the injury of the little girl from the Dongqing family is not optimistic. The old man carrying the chessboard hesitated. It doesn't affect the overall situation. Marshal Li's position can't be changed. Elder Su shook his head. Marshal Li. The old man pinched the chessboard thoughtfully. As long as we work together, he is Marshal Li. Elder Su smiled meaningfully. You've heard the rumors recently. How can I not hear such a big movement? The old man smiled bitterly. Those from the southeast and Kunlun repeatedly asked us to carefully consider Marshal Li's rank of marshal, and even questioned the military merits of the Snowdance Corps. It's a mess. We can work together, but what this little highness does next is also the key. In terms of strength, I don't have to worry about his character. Elder Su smiled and said softly with emotion, Zhongzhou State will be very lively next. The old man nodded. For Minister Dongqing, this should be an opportunity. Elder Su said yes and did not speak. As the loosest giant group among the six, Li Tianlan's initial appearance caused many people to feel uneasy. Dongqing Wudi's unsparing support made the giant group constantly criticized. However, with the outbreak of the chaos in Eastern Europe, all this was temporarily suppressed. When Li Tianlan took over the 5 Eastern European countries centered on Wulan State, the atmosphere inside the giant group began to change. Dongqing Wudi acted quickly. Taking advantage of Li Huaqing's visit to Eastern Europe, he directly placed the cake of the 5 Eastern European countries in front of everyone in the giant group. No one disliked benefits. The huge benefits made the giant group completely united. It naturally accepted Li Tianlan and acquiesced to his position. Not to mention other places in Eastern Europe, just the 5 Eastern European countries were enough to make the giant group eat a lot every day. Please turn the page if this chapter is not over. Li Tianlan was equivalent to a cake maker. As long as he grasped the dominance of the 5 Eastern European countries, Li Tianlan's position in the giant group would become more and more stable. This was the best opportunity for Dongqing Wudi to rectify the loose atmosphere of the giant group and even let Li Tianlan take over. The elevator stopped on the 9th floor and then went all the way down. Elder Su smiled. Isn't that his attitude? He came to see his fiancée as soon as he got better. Is that a reassurance to us old guys? The old man holding the chessboard laughed. Just as he was about to speak, a sudden ringing of the phone suddenly rang. At the same time, Elder Su's phone was also ringing. The two of them looked at each other and answered the phone at the same time. Just after listening to a few words, their faces suddenly changed. When Elder Su's mobile phone fell to the ground, the sound of the chessboard hitting the floor also rang out. The chess pieces rolled, which was extremely crisp. The two old men who had extraordinary influence in the giant group looked at each other and laughed at the same time. This day was August 31st in Zhongzhou State. Under the scorching sun, when the news from the southwest spread in Zhongzhou State with sword intent, countless people made different reactions in addition to being stunned. Some laughed, some were angry, and some were dull. August 31st in Zhongzhou State. Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana sword master of Mount Shu, who had been in closed-door training and had been silent for several days, had officially broken through and entered the Invincible Realm. The former Invincible Realm had fallen silent. The new Invincible Realm came into everyone's sight. The wind and clouds changed. The pace of the new era was steadily moving forward. And this exciting news was constantly spreading with intelligence that no one knew whether it was good news or bad news. Wei Kunlun made a very important decision as soon as he came out of closed-door training. While the news from the southwest was still spreading in Zhongzhou State, the new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State had boarded the plane to Yuzhou with his 3 personal disciples. After the news was repeatedly confirmed countless times, it finally became a fact. Wei Kunlun, the new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State, wanted to find a famous teacher for his 3 personal disciples who had been stuck in the bottleneck period. The famous teacher was in Yuzhou. Wei Kunlun wanted his 3 disciples to learn swordsmanship from Li Tianlan in the next period of time. The wind and clouds surged. Mount Shu, which had been low-key for many years with thousands of sword intent, appeared for the first time in the new era under the sky without shadow. It appeared in front of everyone and appeared beside Li Tianlan. And the pace of the new era was still going on. End of this chapter, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 6:14. The 9th floor was the top floor of the hospital and also the quietest area in the whole hospital. Occasionally, nurses and doctors shuttled back and forth with light and quick footsteps. Everyone's face was tense and solemn. As soon as the elevator door opened, Li Tianlan noticed a few bright red letters on the wall. He didn't understand English and didn't know the full name of these letters, but he knew the meaning of these letters when put together. The 9th floor was the most serious place in the hospital. The intensive care unit, or the intensive care unit. Li Tianlan looked at the bright red letters in front of him and was silent for a long time. His breathing was getting deeper and deeper. Under his calm and emotionless cold eyes, his breath was trembling slightly. Dongqing Rushi was the only injured person in the intensive care unit. Li Tianlan didn't want to think about the worst, but she stayed here. Even in the most optimistic view, Dongqing Rushi was still in danger. The Wang family of Beihai. The Devil Troop. Wang Tianzong's exchange. The Sword Emperor wanted to use the Devil Troop to exchange Li Tianlan, but Dongqing Rushi was seriously injured. Wang Tianzong wouldn't think it was worth it. Li Tianlan wouldn't think it was worth it either. Neither of them was worth it. Li Tianlan walked out of the elevator and clenched his fists calmly. Light footsteps sounded in the corridor. Bai Qingqian, who was wearing a light-colored home dress and slippers, turned the corridor and was stunned when she saw Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was also stunned. He opened his mouth and didn't know what to say for a moment. Bai Qingqian's eyes were still soft. Li Tianlan didn't even see any blame in her eyes. For the first time in his life, Li Tianlan experienced what it was to be ashamed. In her eyes, which were still tolerant and soft, he lowered his head and wanted to find a place to hide. Bai Qingqian walked over and reached out to touch his head. She said softly, "I know you woke up and came to the hospital. I came out to pick you up." "Auntie," Li Tianlan's voice was hoarse and muddle-headed. His voice seemed to be squeezed out from his teeth with great difficulty. "I'm sorry. Silly boy." Bai Qingqian grabbed his hair. This strong woman, who had always been strong and could even be said to be ruthless when facing her opponents in the outside world, did not have the slightest bit of it at this time. In Spearhead, Dongqing Rushi was in a coma. Li Tianlan was in a coma. She looked a little haggard after running around in the prince's mansion hospital, but she was still noble and dignified, graceful and generous. "What nonsense are you talking about? This was such a choice. In such a situation, who would let anyone down? You didn't betray Rushi, and you didn't betray me. Don't think too much." Li Tianlan shook his head and said nothing. Dongqing Rushi took Li Tianlan's hand and led him to the ward. From childhood to adulthood, because we paid too much attention to this engagement, we may have instilled too many ideas in Rushi. She didn't have any rebellious mentality, but she also attached great importance to this engagement. "Tianlan, this is your luck, and also Rushi's luck. You will become husband and wife in the future, and you will be the most intimate person in your life. If I can draw my sword for you, I will be very happy." Men and women were husband and wife. When in danger, the man would stand in front of the woman. It was only right and proper. But since they were husband and wife, why couldn't the woman stand up when the man was temporarily powerless? It was very important for Rushi to step forward this time. I heard about the sword in Eastern Europe. That sword can make you know who Rushi is in your heart, and it can also make Rushi know that you are in her heart. This chapter is not over, please turn the page. Her identity. The door of the ward was pushed open. Bai Qingqian led Li Tianlan in. The layout of the ward was no less than that of a luxury suite, and the room was filled with a faint fragrance. Li Tianlan passed by the living room, stood in front of the door of the bedroom, and pushed open the bedroom door. The strong smell of herbs filled the ward. On the wide bed, the woman who had stood in front of him in Mormons and pulled out silence in the face of the elites of the Devil Troop and the Beihai Corps was lying quietly on the bed. Her body seemed to be lying there without any strength. Her face was pale, and she was motionless. She was beautiful and thin. Li Tianlan carefully walked over and held Dongqing Rushi's palm. The slender white hand was soft in his hand at this time, without any strength. Li Tianlan held Dongqing Rushi's cold palm and was silent for a long time. The doctor just checked. The next week is the key. Whether Rushi can survive or not depends on the next week. But the doctor is still very optimistic. Rushi has a strong desire to live, so he should be able to survive. That's not good. Should be able, very optimistic, feeling the state of Dongqing Rushi's body, Li Tianlan's mouth moved reluctantly. He thought of Qin Weibai's words. It seemed that he had never thought that Dongqing Rushi would die. Now that he thought about it, it turned out that being a vegetable was the most optimistic ending. Vegetable. Vegetable, the Wang family of Beihai. The Devil Troop. The Devil Troop, Li Tianlan's heart suddenly twitched. He stared at Dongqing Rushi's face and sniffed. Dongqing Rushi lay there quietly, motionless. Li Tianlan bent down, got close to Dongqing Rushi's ear, and whispered, "I'm fine." In the weak breath that chilled his heart, he gently bit her ear and said softly, "When you wake up, I'll marry you." In a trance, Dongqing Rushi's eyelashes moved. She seemed to move, but also seemed not to move. Li Tianlan didn't look at her, and he was not in the mood to look at her. He straightened up and walked straight out of the ward. Bai Qingqian stood at the door and looked at him, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. Li Tianlan seemed to have completely calmed down. He smiled and whispered, "Auntie, I'm leaving." "Where do you want to go?" Bai Qingqian asked subconsciously. For some reason, she suddenly felt a little uneasy. Li Tianlan was too quiet, so quiet that she felt a little crazy. "I'm going to see the others." Li Tianlan's voice was extremely calm. "Tianlan," Bai Qingqian looked at Li Tianlan's eyes. "Promise me, don't be impulsive." "Of course." Li Tianlan smiled softly and calmly. "But there are some things that need to be explained." He nodded to Bai Qingqian, walked out of the ward calmly, went out of the corridor at a speed that was almost escaping, and entered the elevator. There was no one in the elevator. Li Tianlan's palm grasped the metal wall of the elevator tightly, and he gasped for breath. His eyes became calmer and calmer, but his 5 fingers pierced through the metal wall of the elevator. This chapter is not over, please turn the page. 5 dark finger holes were left on the wall. The elevator stopped in the first ward. Li Tianlan walked out of the hall and headed for the second ward. Lin Yuxian, who was also a little pale, hurried over. When he saw Li Tianlan, he breathed a sigh of relief. "I just received a call from my sister saying that you woke up. I guess you will come here. How is it? How is Rushi's situation?" Li Tianlan regained his calmness and looked at Lin Yuxian with a bright smile. He whispered, "The situation is very bad." Lin Yuxian was stunned for a moment. Li Tianlan's smile was so calm, which was completely opposite from the content of his words. The corner of his mouth moved, and he didn't know what to say for a moment. "Let's go." Li Tianlan passed by him. "To see Mr. Lin." Lin Yuxian frowned and followed him subconsciously. The temperature was rising. The breeze in the hospital shook the flowers and plants. Lin Yuxian hesitated for a long time before he whispered, I was there at that time, but the devil troop rushed too fast, and Jiang Qiansong died instantly. Rushi not only saved you, but also saved me. The Lin clan owes her a favor. He paused and laughed at himself. No, I owe her a favor. Li Tianlan did not speak. Tianlan, do you want to, go ahead. Li Tianlan suddenly interrupted him. What is the most spectacular place in the dark world? Lin Yuxian was stunned. The most spectacular place in the dark world? He was still thinking, but Li Tianlan had continued. I heard of a place when I was a child. He said softly, gently, and calmly, that's the story my grandfather told me. It's a stone platform built on the top of a mountain. In the middle of the stone platform, there is a stone that has faced the sky and the sea for hundreds of years. He said that there are many names engraved on that stone. The romance of the dark world for hundreds of years is almost all on that stone. That should be the most spectacular place in the dark world. Lin Yuxian's face gradually changed. Have you ever been to Mount Dibbing and the stage of Formidable Person? Li Tianlan suddenly asked. Lin Yuxian shook his head subconsciously. He had been to Mount Dibbing when he was a child, but he had never been to the stage of Formidable Person. It was a forbidden area of the Wang family of Beihai. It was occasionally open to entertain real distinguished guests and big shots. Mount Dibbing, the stage of Formidable Person, Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and smiled. I haven't been there either. He walked forward and was silent for a long time. Then he whispered, I want to have a look. It was like a thunder rolling through the clear sky. Lin Yuxian looked at him with a dull face. He seemed to realize that what he said was inappropriate. So Li Tianlan calmly modified his wording. I'm going to have a look. That kind of madness seemed to be venting in the calmest way. It was suppressed, but it was extremely ferocious. It was threatening. Li Tianlan kept moving forward. The noon sun illuminated the clear sky for thousands of miles. The light fell with high temperature and fell on Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan looked up at the sky. Under the sun, his figure was straight, like the sun. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 615. At night in Yuzhou City, the hazy night shrouded the brightly lit city. An extremely depressing atmosphere seemed to be slowly pressing down with the deepening night, and the whole Yuzhou became a little restless. This afternoon and this night, countless eyes were focused on the private hospitals of Prince Yong's mansion and the giant group. The news that Li Tianlan had woken up had spread. Everyone wanted to know what Li Tianlan, who had experienced the chaos in Eastern Europe and played an important role, would do when faced with everything after waking up. When Li Tianlan returned to the prince's mansion, Qin Weibai had already made dinner in person. Several side dishes were relatively light, and the white porridge was just right. Li Tianlan ate and chatted with Qin Weibai as usual, cleaning up the dishes and chopsticks together. The news broadcast in the living room had come to an end. The last news was about the wounded of the Snowdance Corps who would return to China for treatment in the near future. As for Marshal Li Tianlan of the Snowdance Corps and the military merits of the Snowdance Corps, at least for now, the news did not mention a word. Li Tianlan sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, and watched TV quietly. He held Qin Weibai, who was lazily snuggling up to him, played with her hair, and whispered, What's going on with Mount Shu? Qin Weibai was lazy and nasal, like a cat enjoying the warmth in the sun. Wei Kunlun. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Weibai and said. Wei Kunlun had successfully broken through and become a new invincible realm expert in Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan learned the news almost immediately. What followed was that the new invincible realm expert actually asked his 3 disciples to learn swordsmanship from him. Behind such an incredible move, there was no greater kindness. Li Tianlan communicated with Dongqing Wudi as soon as he heard the news. Dongqing Wudi said that the matter of Mount Shu had nothing to do with him. He also called Li Honghe, who was still in Linfen. Li Honghe frankly admitted that he could influence Yun Qinshi, the Phantom Sword Master, but he was also confused about Wei Kunlun. As for the academics, Li Tianlan was just in a cooperative relationship with them. Even if the academics had a good card like Wei Kunlun in their hands, it was impossible for them to hand it over to him. Moreover, Mount Shu was located in the southwest with thousands of sword energy. In the martial arts and the dark realm in the southwest of Zhongzhou State, it could be called the unique king. The southwest was the headquarters of the Prince Group. In many cases, Mount Shu, especially Wei Kunlun's branch, had always been regarded as the power of the Prince Group. Now Wei Kunlun's elder brother, Wei Tianheng, was one of the deputy ministers of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State and the real tycoon of the Prince Group. No one would believe that Mount Shu would become a pawn in the hands of the academics, the sworn enemy of the Prince Group. In this way, Wei Kunlun, whom he had never met, suddenly showed such great kindness to Li Tianlan. Excluding the new invincible realm expert's affection for Li Tianlan, the only driving force behind the scenes was the Samsara Palace. The look in Qin Weibai's eyes was somewhat complicated. He should have already gotten off the plane and is on his way here. When he arrives, let him talk to you. If this chapter is not finished, please turn the page. Li Tianlan took a deep look at him and nodded. Qin Weibai arched into Li Tianlan's arms, as if she wanted him to hold her more comfortably. She was silent for a while and asked carefully, "How is Rushi?" "She's not doing well." Li Tianlan's tone was so ordinary that even he himself felt it incredible. At present, being in a vegetative state is the best result. I had a talk with the experts in the afternoon. In theory, there is a possibility of recovery, but it will take a long time. Being in a vegetative state, Qin Weibai was thinking about the master of Samsara Palace's scheme. After countless replays of the final battle, she was more and more sure of the master of Samsara Palace's plan. From the beginning, the master of Samsara Palace did not pin all her hopes on Li Tianlan staying in Reki City. She hoped that Li Tianlan would stay there. But even if he appeared in Mormons, Dongqing Rushi could still be her bargaining chip. She just didn't know if she would predict Dongqing Rushi's ending, and whether she would feel distressed and guilty. Qin Weibai smiled self-deprecatingly. That woman. Maybe she didn't care about anyone or anything at all except Li Tianlan. It will get better. She looked up at him in Li Tianlan's arms and gently touched his face. Do you think I should regret it? Li Tianlan suddenly asked. He thought quietly. Some problems seem to be clear, but I don't seem to understand. For example, when the palace master stabbed me with a sword, if I didn't go to Mormons, Rushi wouldn't be like this now, and it turned out that I really didn't play any role in the final chaos. And if I didn't go? Do you regret it? Qin Weibai interrupted him and asked. Li Tianlan was silent for a while. I don't know. He shook his head. Yes, when he almost lost Dongqing Rushi and was stabbed by the master of Samsara Palace, his answer was that he didn't know if he would regret it or not. Under the circumstances at that time, it was impossible for him not to go to Mormons. He had to go. That's it. Qin Weibai said softly, most of the time, no matter whether we change anything or not, the initial attitude is actually the most important. You don't know if you will regret it, but I can be sure that if you don't go to Mormons that night, Zhongzhou State will be disappointed with you, and you will be disappointed with yourself. Li Tianlan smiled bitterly. Maybe. The news broadcast ended. The weather forecast also came to an end. It would rain heavily tomorrow in Beihai Province. Li Tianlan looked at the picture on the TV, narrowed his eyes, and whispered, there are some things that must be explained. Little Bai, I'm going to Mount Dibbing to have a look at the stage of formidable person. 10 years, within 10 years, this chapter is not over. Please turn the page. You can definitely overlook the entire Mount Dibbing. Qin Weibai's voice was resolute. I can't wait for 10 years. Li Tianlan laughed. Qin Weibai was stunned and whispered, within 5 years, there is a chance. When do you want to go? In Beihai Province, the heavy rain would turn into a rainstorm tomorrow. Li Tianlan pointed to the screen and said calmly, tomorrow. No. Qin Weibai suddenly sat up from Li Tianlan's arms. Because she moved too fast, her forehead hit Li Tianlan's nose, and they both grunted at the same time. No. Qin Weibai rubbed her forehead with one hand and gently stroked Li Tianlan's nose with the other. Do you know what the stage of formidable person means to the Wang family of Beihai? That's the forbidden area of the Wang family of Beihai. It's the most sacred place in the entire Mount Dibing, and its status is even higher than Wang Tianzong's bedchamber. Only the big shots who are really recognized by the Wang family of Beihai are lucky enough to climb Mount Dibing, and they must be recognized by the Wang family of Beihai. From another perspective, only the kind of people who have common and huge interests with the Wang family of Beihai in some cooperation will be recognized by the Wang family of Beihai. In the past 10 years, only 3 people in the world who are not from the Wang family of Beihai are lucky enough to set foot on the stage of formidable person. Do you know who they are? Who are they? Li Tianlan asked softly. His finger pointed at Qin Weibai's white and tender forehead, and he was somewhat careless. One is Li Huacheng, the president of Zhengzhou State. The other is Paul, the patriarch of Rothschild. Qin Weibai said. Who's the third? Li Tianlan glanced at her. Qin Weibai hesitated and whispered, the third is Cold Winter Building, the boss of Zhengzhou State's Flourishing Age Fund. Li Tianlan was stunned. Before he realized what was going on, there was a knock on the door. Come in. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. A tall and plump European woman walked in from the door and said respectfully, Your Highness, boss. Li Tianlan looked at her and was in a trance for a moment. The one who appeared in front of him was Horsewoman, one of the surviving super masters of Samsara Palace. Qin Weibai straightened up from Li Tianlan's arms and said lightly, What's wrong? Distinguished guests are here. Horsewoman whispered, Shall we let them in? Who? Li Tianlan asked. Horsewoman glanced at him quickly. President Li Huacheng, and Secretary Wang Qinglei of Wuyue, Qin Weibai said, Oh, and did not speak, thinking that the actors were here. Li Tianlan patted Qin Weibai's buttocks casually and said with a chuckle, Go make a cup of tea and listen to what they have to say. End of this chapter, bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 616. In front of the antique, expensive, and luxurious hall, Li Tianlan stood there, watching Li Huacheng and Wang Qinglei coming over, and made a gesture of welcome with a calm expression. However, Li Huacheng, who had just returned to Zhengzhou State from Eastern Europe, looked at that excessively young face and had countless emotions in his heart. He hadn't seen Li Tianlan for only a week. But this week was the week when the new and the old changed. The final day passed, and the chaos came to an end. From the second he woke up, Li Tianlan's status had changed dramatically. Li Huacheng wasn't sure if Li Tianlan was aware of this. But facing this young man again, he was no longer relaxed. Now, this young man, who was only 22 years old, was already qualified to stand at the peak of the whole dark world after the older generation became silent one after another. After gaining the strong support of the giant group, he was now qualified to win anyone's respect. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Li Tianlan took the initiative to take 2 steps forward unhurriedly. Mr. President. He took the initiative to salute and shook hands with Li Huacheng. Li Huacheng's expression was gentle and calm. He patted Li Tianlan's palm and said with a smile, How's your injury? I heard that you were seriously injured and in a coma in Mormons. Not only me, but many comrades, including Qinglei, are very worried. After all, you are the hope to protect Zhengzhou State in the future. I'm fine now. Some rumors have been exaggerated. Li Tianlan shook his head and glanced at Wang Qinglei. There was only indifference in his expression and eyes. Secretary Wang. That's good, that's good. Wang Qinglei smiled. This big shot of the Wang family of Beihai. As the leader of the Southeast Group, he had become the most eye-catching political figure in Zhengzhou State in recent years. He was also the key to the delicate atmosphere within the Wang family of Beihai. Everyone knew his goal, and everyone was watching how he would go on. At this time tonight, he followed Li Huaqing to Prince Yong's mansion to visit Li Tianlan, which had already caused countless discussions and speculations. Li Tianlan was also speculating in his heart. But at least on the surface, Wang Qinglei did not reveal the slightest different emotion. His eyes and smile were extremely sincere, filled with gratification and joy, impeccable. Li Tianlan nodded and reached out his hand, saying, "Please." Qin Weibai had already made tea in the living room. Amidst the faint fragrance of tea, she stood up and greeted Li Huaqing with a smile. She was graceful, elegant, quiet, and gentle. The once high and mighty goddess seemed to have become a quiet and well-behaved wife in a trance, and her demeanor became more and more dazzling. Li Huaqing sat on the sofa and sipped his tea, thinking about what to say. Li Tianlan looked at him calmly. In fact, he had always been a person who didn't know much about the ways of the world. Before he entered the human world, the camp in the primeval forest and the prison in the desert did not pay attention to this. After he entered the human world, there was a decisive battle, and there was no need for this kind of 3 years of traveling. The chaos in Eastern Europe was more like a life-and-death plunder and conquest. For the time being, he couldn't learn that kind of deception and hiding a knife in a smile, nor was he interested in it. Therefore, he didn't mind the awkward silence at all. He just looked at Li Huaqing quietly to see what he could say. "Tianlan, here's the thing. There are still many repercussions of what happened in Eastern Europe. Internally, our comrades also have many different opinions, and many people want to hear your attitude. At the beginning of tomorrow, the decision-making committee will hold a plenary meeting. I'm here to invite you to attend tomorrow. This meeting can be regarded as your work report after returning home. How about it?" Li Huaqing took the initiative to speak with a smile. "Tomorrow?" Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. "What time tomorrow?" 8:00 in the morning. Li Huaqing glanced at him. "This chapter is not over. Please turn the page." He laughed and said, "Why?" "Tianlan, do you have other things to do tomorrow? It will take the Snowdance Corps 2 days to withdraw from Eastern Europe. I can do it in the morning." Li Tianlan glanced at Wang Qinglei calmly and said lightly, "It's just that I experienced something in Eastern Europe. There are some things that I want an explanation for." He looked into Wang Qinglei's eyes and said calmly, "Secretary Wang, I want to go to the stage of formidable person to have a look. What do you think?" The stage of formidable person. Even Li Huaqing's face couldn't help changing when he heard this. Wang Qinglei raised his head in astonishment and looked at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's eyes were calm and serious. The smile on Wang Qinglei's face disappeared little by little. He seemed to feel a little ridiculous, and his tone was full of absurdity and strange sarcasm. "Do you want to go to the stage of formidable person?" "More than that." Li Tianlan said, "I want to go." "I'm sorry." Wang Qinglei's eyes seemed to become cold for a moment. The stage of formidable person is a forbidden place in Beihai province. It is not a place that can welcome your highness's victory. I can make the decision on this matter, and I can tell you clearly that your highness is not welcome at the stage of formidable person. "I heard that." Li Tianlan nodded. He stood up and looked at Wang Qinglei condescendingly. "But you seem to have forgotten a problem." His tone was gentle and calm. "Do you think anyone can stop me now where I want to go?" "Tianlan." Li Huaqing frowned. Wang Qinglei took a deep look at him. He said softly, "I know there are many misunderstandings between the Wang family of Beihai and your highness, but many things can be solved. Everyone is in Zhongzhou state. At this time, the situation is delicate. I hope your highness can focus on the overall situation." "Don't," he had not finished his words. Li Tianlan suddenly stretched out his hand. The entire space of the mansion shook as he stretched out his hand. Wang Qinglei's body flew up directly and fell into Li Tianlan's hand. Li Tianlan grabbed his neck tightly and lifted him up. In an instant, his eyes were gloomy and scarlet, as if he had completely lost his mind. Focus on the overall situation. His voice was as cold as the chilly wind blowing from the abyss of hell, tyrannical and presumptuous. When the devil troop united with Rothschild to kill me, why didn't anyone say that? When Wang Tianzong sent the devil troop to attack the manor, why didn't anyone say that? If the Wang family of Beihai could really focus on the overall situation, would my fiancé be lying in the hospital now? Now I'm still alive, and I want to go to the stage of formidable person. You tell me to focus on the overall situation. Wang, Qinglei. You tell me, what is the overall situation? Bang! The fist with great power directly hit Wang Qinglei's abdomen. The overall situation you mentioned, whose overall situation are you talking about? Wang Qinglei spat out blood, and his body slid along the floor for nearly 20 meters. The ferocious and tyrannical killing intent swept through the hall. Li Tianlan took a step forward. Behind him, Qin Weibai's arms came over and hugged him tightly. Li Huaqing's serious and somewhat gloomy face appeared in front of him. Tianlan, do you know what you're doing? Li Tianlan took a deep look at him. The killing intent was disappearing. All the emotions were suppressed in his heart in an instant. Of course. He laughed. Sorry, I was a little emotional just now. But since Secretary Wang is a person who cares about the overall situation, I guess you won't mind what just happened, right? He tilted his head and looked at Wang Qinglei, who was struggling to get up from the ground. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. He said with no expression, Secretary Wang, the overall situation is the most important thing. Li Huaqing glared at Li Tianlan, but he was obviously not really angry. In the rapid footsteps, the tall and plump figure of horsewoman appeared at the door again. Your Highness. She glanced at the situation in the living room and said calmly, Mr. Wei Kunlun, the Nirvana sword master of Mount Shu, is here to visit. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes. Both Li Huaqing and Wang Qinglei were slightly stunned. It was no secret that Wei Kunlun, the new invincible realm expert of Zhongzhou State, wanted his 3 personal disciples, who he valued very much, to learn swordsmanship from Li Tianlan. But no one thought that Wei Kunlun would come so soon. Li Tianlan thought about it, looked at Li Huaqing, nodded and said, Mr. President, excuse me. Li Huaqing nodded, looked at Li Tianlan's back, and then looked at Wang Qinglei, whose face was pale. The two followed Li Tianlan out at the same time. Li Tianlan walked quickly through the mansion. When he approached the gate of the mansion, Wei Kunlun had already walked in with 3 disciples. This was the first time that Li Tianlan had seen the famous Nirvana sword master in Zhongzhou State. He used to be one of the strongest superiors of the half-step invincible realm in the dark world, but he had always been outside the general trend. He was not in the final battle of Heaven Capital, nor in the chaos of Eastern Europe. Even in the past 3 years, when the dark world was full of flames of war, the sword energy of Mount Shu had never left the southwest. Everyone thought that he was in closed-door training to find a way to break through the invincible realm. But no one expected that after he entered the invincible realm, the first thing he did was to visit Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan looked at Wei Kunlun in front of him seriously. Wei Kunlun was not old, between young and middle-aged, about 40 years old. His appearance and figure were not very outstanding, but his every move, subtle but vivid sword energy could be said to be everywhere. Li Tianlan frowned. He instinctively felt that the other party's sword energy was a little familiar, but he didn't know where he had felt it. Your Highness, you have heard about my purpose of coming here. My 3 useless disciples, if your Highness works hard, they may be able to take charge in the future. We are all acquaintances, so I don't have to beat around the bush. Let my 3 disciples join the East Emperor Palace and learn swordsmanship from your Highness. How about that? Li Tianlan glanced at the 3 people behind Wei Kunlun. 2 men and 1 woman. The female disciple was naturally Yi Huayu, the only one Li Tianlan was familiar with. As for the other 2, he had never seen them before. 3 people joined the East Emperor Palace? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. Your Highness, do you think it's too little? Wei Kunlun laughed loudly and said calmly and gently, from now on, the entire Mount Shu will join the East Emperor Palace. What do you think, Your Highness? He paused, looked at Li Tianlan, and said with a smile, including me. Li Tianlan's heart suddenly jumped. This pie fell from the sky so suddenly that he was a little vigilant. He gradually raised his eyebrows, looked at Wei Kunlun, and said calmly, Your Highness, what do you mean? It's boring. Wei Kunlun looked at Li Tianlan. We are on the same side. He stood in front of Li Tianlan and bowed slightly. His voice with sword energy instantly shrouded the whole mansion, clear as thunder. Wei Kunlun, the saint of the Samsara Palace, Wei Kunlun, the saint, Wei Kunlun, Kunlun, in the incessant voice, he lowered his body and said calmly, Greetings, Your Highness. End of this chapter, bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 617. Samsara Palace, Saint, Mount Shu, Nirvana Sword Master. Wei Kunlun. This was the calmest attitude, enough to dispel everyone's doubts and speculations. Such a calm attitude was also like the most surging wave, fiercely washing the minds of countless people in Yuzhou. Saint was Wei Kunlun. In other words, from the moment Saint first appeared in the Dark World, Mount Shu had already belonged to the Samsara Palace, and it was even the most important part of the Samsara Palace. Among the countless elites of the Samsara Palace, there might be swordsmen from Mount Shu. Everyone thought that Wei Kunlun imprisoned himself in Mount Shu in order to break through the invincible realm, but the truth was extremely ironic. Mount Shu had never been silent. The swords of Mount Shu had always been active in the highest place of the Dark World, but in another identity. With the official demise of Samsara Palace, a large number of secrets did not disappear completely. Instead, they were being revealed bit by bit under the sky of the new era. Saint Wei Kunlun. Who could have thought of this? Who could have thought of the consequences when Mount Shu stood firmly behind Li Tianlan? Wang Qinglei, who followed Li Tianlan out, stiffened for a moment. The corners of his mouth twitched, and he laughed at himself. In the past many years, with the collapse of the Li family, the Wang family of Beihai and Kunlun City had been firmly controlling the dark realm of Zhongzhou State, not allowing any dark force to take root in Zhongzhou State. What was the result? Mount Shu had always been a force of Samsara Palace. And in the vast Zhongzhou State, in addition to Mount Shu, who were the other forces of Samsara Palace? There was Li Honghe in Linpen. The old fox, who was best at planning and liked to set up the overall situation, had been quietly hiding in Zhongzhou State for more than 20 years. What tricks did he have? Wang Qinglei took a deep breath. Somehow, there seemed to be an unstoppable force rising, unstoppable. Li Tianlan helped Wei Kunlun up. Amidst the shock, the #1 expert of Shushan was calm as usual. There was a smile in his eyes, and there was even a tinge of gratitude that could not be detected. From today on, I am Saint, and also Wei Kunlun. If your Highness needs anything, just tell me. Mount Shu will do its best. Wei Kunlun's voice was calm and powerful. So it's you. The look in Li Tianlan's eyes was complicated. The combination of Saint and Wei Kunlun made him feel that everything was extremely illusory. Did you reveal your identity at this time because you broke through the invincible realm? It's the Palace Master's will. Wei Kunlun said, it's also the Palace Master's idea that Mount Shu joins the East Emperor Palace. Li Tianlan was silent for a while and said calmly, but the Palace Master left. Yeah, let's go. Wei Kunlun looked at Li Tianlan quietly, and a different emotion flashed through his eyes. Li Tianlan shook his head hard, reached out and said, let's talk inside. In the direction he pointed, Li Huacheng and Wang Qinglei slowly walked over. Mr. President? Wei Kunlun raised his eyebrows and glanced at Wang Qinglei. He asked in confusion, what are you guys doing? It's nothing. Li Huacheng smiled and shook hands with Wei Kunlun. Tianlan just woke up. I came to see him on behalf of my comrades. Since there's nothing else, I should go back. He looked at Li Tianlan and said, there's a meeting tomorrow morning. Someone will send the contents of the meeting over later. Don't be late. Li Tianlan nodded and said yes. Li Huaqing walked to the door. Wang Qinglei followed behind. He hesitated for a moment, then turned around. Li Tianlan looked at him with gloomy eyes. It had only been a few minutes since the conflict between the two, but Li Tianlan had Mount Shu. Obviously, he had a different power from before. He wanted to hear what Wang Qinglei would say. Still the same sentence. Wang Qinglei's voice was a little hoarse and weak. Your Highness, please focus on the overall situation. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and said expressionlessly, get out. Wang Qinglei raised his head and took a deep look at him. Then he slowly turned around and left. With his identity, he was humiliated. Instead of exploding, an inexplicable joy and smile flashed in his eyes at the moment he turned around. Li Tianlan looked at his back and didn't speak for a long time. Wei Kunlun stood beside him and watched all this. After a long time, he whispered, Your Highness, Mr. President's attitude needs to be carefully considered. It's a cooperation to begin with. How can there be so much intimacy? Li Tianlan said quietly. You saw it? Wei Kunlun glanced at him. It's a good show. Li Tianlan shook his head and turned to walk toward his residence. Wang Qinglei performed well, but I didn't do anything when I punched him. Wei Kunlun laughed in a low voice. He didn't worry that Li Tianlan couldn't figure it out. It would be a problem sooner or later. However, Li Tianlan's current attitude clearly showed that he was very clear-headed and didn't get carried away by what happened to Dongqing Rushi. He's provoking me. Li Tianlan said blandly, the person who doesn't know the overall situation wants me to focus on the overall situation. He just wants me to break the current situation. I'll go to the stage of formidable person. Today, he said that I should focus on the overall situation, which almost blocked my way out. Of course, I don't need any way out. In the current situation, I can go wherever I want. Wang Qinglei is also a person who doesn't care about the overall situation and stability. Wei Kunlun made a simple comment. Li Tianlan didn't speak. He couldn't determine Wang Tianzong's current specific state. But he could be sure that under the eternal sword light, even if Wang Tianzong had immortality, he would certainly not be better. He didn't die, and Li Kuangtu didn't die, which also showed this. Such a situation was rare for Wang Qinglei. He wanted to seize power and control the Wang family of Beihai. In the case of Wang Tianzong's serious injury, the best way was to suppress his prestige and influence in the Wang family of Beihai. At present, nothing could suppress Wang Tianzong's prestige more than Li Tianlan stepping on the stage of formidable person. So Wang Qinglei said that he should focus on the overall situation, which was completely to provoke him to go to Mount Dibing. Li Tianlan didn't care about all this. Whether Wang Qinglei appeared or not tonight, it wouldn't affect his decision. Through the thousands of lights in Yuzhou, he couldn't see Beihai or the mountain in Beihai. But he would go there. He must go there. In the most above-board way. However, although this person doesn't care about the overall situation, his means have always been very clever. Your Highness, if you want to go to Mount Dibing, how about I go with you? Wei Kunlun continued. No need. Li Tianlan shook his head. They're just a group of clowns. The chaos in Eastern Europe, the eternal sword, Wang Tianzong. It seems that these things still can't make them understand the truth. Wei Kunlun looked at Li Tianlan. What truth? The real power can fight against the whole world alone with one sword. Li Tianlan said. His voice was very light, but with a kind of vague spirit that could look down on the world. Wei Kunlun was silent for a while and looked at the three disciples behind him. They can learn swordsmanship from your Highness. It may be the honor of the whole Mount Shu in the future. Li Tianlan turned to look at Wei Kunlun. Your Highness, do you really want to join the East Emperor Palace? He asked very seriously. I'm not, Your Highness. Wei Kunlun said with a smile, you are. As for the name of the East Emperor Palace, Your Highness should consider changing it. Li Tianlan said yes. Chapter 618. It was already September in Yuzhou. The early morning sun was already tinged with the hint of autumn. The maple leaves in the hidden dragon sea gradually changed color. The car passed through the clean and tidy road in the hidden dragon sea. Li Tianlan looked at the sky outside the window, his eyes as deep as endless clouds. This was not his first time coming to the hidden dragon sea. However, this was his first time attending a meeting in the hidden dragon sea. There was no Dongqing Wudi, no Wei Kunlun, no one around him. It had been almost 4 years since he had entered the world, and he alone was qualified to step into that meeting room. The car moved forward slowly. The morning breeze blew past, and the surface of the hidden ocean rippled. Last night, the contents of the meeting had been formed into a document and transmitted to Prince Yong's mansion, as well as the hands of every member of parliament. In fact, the work direction of Zhongzhou State in September had been determined at yesterday's meeting. Today's meeting, strictly speaking, was only about one thing, summarizing Zhongzhou State's gains and losses in Eastern Europe this time. Li Tianlan casually flipped through the information in his hand, thinking about the rumors that were not really rumors, and was lost in thought. Your Highness, we've arrived. The young but calm driver stopped the car and reminded them. Li Tianlan looked up. In his line of sight was an ancient-looking but extremely dignified hall. The national emblem and the red star flag fluttered solemnly in the wind. Li Tianlan looked at this scene with a strange look in his eyes. At this moment, no one knew what he was thinking. People were coming and going in front of the main hall. Members of parliament who held great power in Zhongzhou State appeared here one after another. The secretary and the chauffeur were busy. Sitting in the car, Li Tianlan smoked a cigarette and casually threw the butt out. Patting the driver's seat, he whispered, "Go back. Don't wait for me. I'll go back myself." The driver hesitated for a moment, nodded, reversed the car, and left the hidden dragon sea. Li Tianlan stood under a maple tree and looked at the blue sky above his head. The warm autumn sun cast spots of light on the treetops. The light and shadows fell on him, making him look like a statue. Li Tianlan looked at it and was silent for a long time. "What is Your Highness thinking about?" A warm and indifferent voice suddenly sounded. Li Tianlan turned his head and took a look. In his line of sight, a middle-aged man wearing the same military uniform as him with the rank of a marshal was standing beside him, smiling calmly. Deputy Minister of the Army Headquarters of Zhongzhou State, Chief of the General Staff. Zhongzhou God of Army Yi Dongsheng. General Yi. Li Tianlan smiled and reached out to shake hands with him naturally. He still remembered that it was this god of army of Zhongzhou State who appeared in the Li family's camp. The year he left, he also set foot on the road to Huading. Yes, back then. Yi Dongsheng's eyes flashed. He held Li Tianlan's hand tightly. "I'm thinking," he patted Yi Dongsheng's shoulder with the other hand and pointed to the sky. "Look at the sky, isn't it different from before?" The corner of Yi Dongsheng's eyes twitched. He narrowed his eyes and said calmly, "Your Highness seems to be implying something." "No." Li Tianlan handed Yi Dongsheng a cigarette with a smile and said softly, "I'm just saying that today is a good day." "It really is a good day." Yi Dongsheng took the cigarette and smiled, "Your Highness, please." Li Tianlan shook his head. "I'm waiting for someone." "After you, Marshal Yi." Yi Dongsheng nodded and looked at him deeply. "All right, see you later." Li Tianlan replied with a hum. In his sight, a black Audi with a Northeast license plate slowly drove over. Li Tianlan casually waved his hand and motioned for the driver to stop. The car stopped in front of Li Tianlan. The door of the back row opened, and a beautiful woman with a graceful appearance but a sharp and dangerous aura got out. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. In the car, she looked at Li Tianlan in surprise. Young governor, you, Li Tianlan looked at her and thought for a while. Deep Dream? Yes. Deep Dream nodded and smiled. Long time no see. I thought you forgot me. How come? Li Tianlan looked at the back row of the car, and then looked at the top assassin of Sai City who had fought with him 3 years ago. What are you doing? Governor, it's not convenient for you to act now. The minister is unconscious. Only I came to attend the meeting on behalf of the Northeast Special Warfare Headquarters. Governor said that this meeting is very important to you. She originally wanted to come in person, but her injury recurred, so, Deep Dream wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Governor, how is your injury? Li Tianlan asked subconsciously. After that, he had a video call with Situ Tsangyue, and he also saw Tribulation, who was accidentally rescued from Eastern Europe by General Nan, the deputy commander of the Navy of Zhongzhou State. Tribulation's injury was extremely serious. His foundation was completely destroyed, and he was still in a coma. Naturally, the Vatican had to take responsibility for this. Situ Tsangyue's injury was also not optimistic, and it even threatened her future combat capability. The chaos in Eastern Europe was too fierce. The Invincible Realm experts were either killed or injured. Those who survived by chance were destined to need a long time to recover. It's not very optimistic. She needs to recuperate. According to our deduction, for at least a few years, she can't even have intense exercise, let alone fight. Deep Dream shook her head and said apologetically, that's why I'm here this time. But I'm neither the governor nor the minister. I only have the right to speak at today's meeting. I don't think I can help you much. Li Tianlan looked at her in silence and whispered, go back. Ah. Deep Dream looked at Li Tianlan and seemed to be unable to react. You're wrong. Governor, you're wrong too. Li Tianlan whispered. He turned to look at the door of the conference room, where people were coming and going, and chuckled. I don't need any help now, so go back. But, Deep Dream wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. No buts. Li Tianlan waved his hand and said in an unquestionable tone, but it's rare for you to come to Yuzhou. You can go to Prince Yong's mansion first. Little Bai and His Highness Wei Kunlun are both there. If you have any bottlenecks in martial arts, you can learn from the swordsmanship of Mount Shu. Go back. This is an order. Deep Dream bit her lip and whispered, today's meeting, I know. Li Tianlan said lightly, I know what some people want to say, but I'm not here to attend the meeting today. He pushed Deep Dream into the car, closed the door, and said to the driver, go back to Prince Yong's mansion. He glanced at Deep Dream and said, in a few days, everything will be explained. The Audi was slowly turning around. Li Tianlan watched it quietly. That day was the first time he came to the Hidden Dragon Sea to attend the high-level meeting of the decision-making committee. He transferred the driver away and sent Deep Dream away. He also stopped Wei Kunlun, the new Invincible Realm expert of Zhongzhou State and the minister of the Southwest Special Warfare Headquarters, who wanted to attend the meeting with him today. Today, he was alone. Looking at the conference room in front of him, he stamped out the cigarette butt and walked over slowly. Tianlan. Ah, no, now I should call you Marshal Li, or Your Highness. Ha! An old but vigorous voice sounded in front of the conference room door, sounding extremely hearty. Wu Zhengmin, the Deputy Prime Minister of Zhongzhou State, walked down the steps in person. Li Tianlan hurriedly took a few steps forward, held Wu Zhengmin's warm palm, and said with a wry smile, Grandpa Wu, you still call me Tianlan, which makes me feel comfortable. Li Tianlan had nothing but respect for Wu Zhengmin, who had defended Jiangzhou with unparalleled political wisdom despite the collapse of the Li family for many years. Wu Zhengmin laughed and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. Tianlan, you're good. You're very good. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Li Tianlan shook his head with a wry smile. Wu Zhengmin had already waved in another direction. White, Mulan, what are you doing there? Come and have a chat. His voice was loud and clear, and he was full of energy. He talked and laughed cheerfully and freely. Many people nearby looked over, whether intentionally or unintentionally. On the other side, Bai Zhanfang, who could almost be called the local emperor in Yuzhou, shook his head and walked over. Zhou Mulan, the real magnate of Zhongzhou state, also wanted to come over, but the secretary walked over and said something in his ear. He smiled and cupped his hands to this side, nodded to Li Tianlan, and walked in another direction. "Old guy, what are you shouting for? I heard your loud voice as soon as I came. It's outrageous." Bai Zhanfang came over and said in a helpless tone. Wu Zhengmin snorted coldly and said indifferently, "Some people are just outrageous. Making a racket? I've already given him face by not slapping him in the face. What's he doing by taking advantage of his seniority?" "Taking advantage of your seniority?" Bai Zhanfang glanced at him with a faint smile. Wu Zhengmin froze for a moment and chuckled. Indeed, among all the people in the senior management of Zhongzhou state, he and Bai Zhanfang were the oldest. One was the first, and the other was the second. "I'm not talking about us. That old guy is a few years older than us." Wu Zhengmin said, "The southeast has brought up that old guy to target Tianlan. White, you must show your attitude today." Bai Zhanfang glanced at Li Tianlan, nodded, and was about to speak. Li Tianlan suddenly said, "Against me?" "Yes." Bai Zhanfang nodded and said, "There are several old comrades present at this meeting. They are all veterans. Because they have retired, they have no scruples about what they say and what they do. The Southeast invited an old guy to come out in order to target your achievements in Eastern Europe and suppress your credit. But don't worry, old Wu and I can handle it." "I'm not worried." Li Tianlan smiled and said softly, "I'm ready to face everything since I can stand here today. Grandpa Wu, Grandpa Bai." He looked at the two old men in front of him and said, "Thank you for today, but no need." His gaze was firm and indifferent. "Today, this is my battlefield. You just have to watch. In fact, I have been thinking about this day for many years. The Li family fell from here. Today, I will lift the Li family up again." "By yourself?" Bai Zhanfang raised his eyebrows, and his eyes were complicated. "By myself." Li Tianlan nodded. "Enough." He nodded to the two old men and walked to the door of the conference room. "Are you Li Tianlan?" An old but extremely sharp voice suddenly sounded in Li Tianlan's ear. Li Tianlan turned his head and raised his eyebrows. In his sight was an extremely thin old man, dressed in an old Chinese tunic suit and holding a cane. He was almost skinny, but his eyes were extremely sharp as a knife. Li Tianlan nodded and said gently, "I am." "Humph." The old man snorted coldly. "I really don't know what Comrade Hua Cheng is thinking. Does a young boy deserve to attend the high-level meeting of Zhongzhou State? It's nonsense." The old man raised his cane and almost pointed it at Li Tianlan's face. "Look at you. Ask yourself, do you deserve the rank of marshal? Do you deserve it?" The old man's voice was sharp and loud. In an instant, almost everyone's eyes were focused on him and Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan smiled softly, still gentle and calm. But in this calmness, Bai Zhanfang and Wu Zhengmin clearly saw the fighting spirit and madness in his eyes. "Who can tell me?" Li Tianlan looked around and smiled slowly. He pointed at the old man in front of him and asked, "What is this old man?" End of this chapter, bookmark for easy reading. Chapter 619. An unprecedented atmosphere pervaded in front of the conference room. Li Tianlan's voice was very light and gentle, but his voice fell clearly in everyone's ears. It sounded elegant, but extremely ferocious. "Old bastard." What was it? In the solemn hidden dragon sea, it was not uncommon for giants to argue or even quarrel. But such sharp words still stimulated the nerves of all high-level officials in Zhongzhou state. Many people couldn't even remember how many years it had been since they heard such words. The old man's face suddenly turned red, and a pair of eyeballs in his shriveled eye sockets almost popped out, looking extremely ferocious. The crutch in his hand was still pointed at Li Tianlan, and his voice was grumpy. "Say it again." Li Tianlan didn't even look at him. There was a faint smile on his calm face, but the madness was burning in his heart like a wildfire. The dangerous temperature filled the conference room of Hidden Dragon Sea, almost everywhere. Many people had seen Li Tianlan. However, not many people understood him. But even so, at this moment, seeing Li Tianlan's smile, everyone still felt a strong sense of alienation. They didn't know this young man who might be on an equal footing with them after today. But they were keenly aware that he was different from before. He was completely different. "Is no one going to introduce me?" Li Tianlan's voice was with a smile. "Ain't nobody offended the Marshal of Zhongzhou State. Do you really think that I dare not kill you?" Crack. A subtle sword intent suddenly appeared at the front of the crutch. The wooden crutch suddenly shattered. The sword energy condensed. Before it was about to envelop the old man, a hand gently supported the old man and took him a step back. Bang! In the dull sound, the floor where the old man had been standing was completely shattered. The invisible sword energy spread to the left and right for nearly 20 meters at a moderate speed, all the way to the conference room. The expensive floor was broken and looked very ugly. Everyone was stunned. The fastest computer, no one thought that Li Tianlan would really do it. There was no doubt that if the old man had stepped back a second later, his body would have been cut into countless pieces by this sword intent. Since the founding of Zhongzhou State, this place might have been stained with blood, but no one died. This was something that had never happened before. Everyone was looking at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan's expression was calm and lazy, and the faint smile on his face became more and more indifferent. But behind the indifference, the trace of madness began to become more and more obvious. "Your Highness, why are you so angry?" Yi Dongxing stood beside the old man and looked at Li Tianlan. There was no helplessness on his face, no wry smile, no anger, only seriousness. Most of the time, seriousness meant fear. In terms of force, he was no match for Li Tianlan. But that didn't mean Yi Dongxing was afraid of him. But now, standing in front of Li Tianlan, Yi Dongxing really felt the danger. Li Tianlan was as calm as a madman. Li Tianlan stared at Yi Dongxing quietly. After a long time, he touched his nose and smiled. "Marshal Yi, can you introduce me? This is my teacher." Yi Dongxing said seriously, "Old Marshal Tang Wanson of Zhongzhou State." Li Tianlan tilted his head, looked at the old man, and said, "Oh." He was no stranger to the name Tang Wanson. The Tang family was originally a big family in Yuzhou. Although it was not as good as the Bai family, it was an important part of the Southeast Group in building the network of Yuzhou. Tang Wanson was a member of Zhongzhou State more than 20 years ago and the deputy minister of the army headquarters. His position was roughly the same as Yi Dongxing's today. He had a hot temper and even contradicted Li Honghe in public. That was when the Li family and the Wang family of Beihai were close. In his era, he could indeed be regarded as a big shot whose words carried weight. Li Tianlan smiled. "An old guy who has retired for more than a decade, where on earth does he get the courage to question whether I deserve the rank of marshal?" His eyes moved from Tang Wanson to Yi Dongxing. "I'll keep this in mind." At that moment, countless surging malice and killing intent in the air hit Yi Dongxing in the face without disguise. Yi Dongxing could hardly breathe. Li Tianlan turned around and nodded to several members of parliament beside him, then walked into the conference room. There were also members of parliament chatting in the conference room. Member Zhong Yongming of Huading was whispering something to a deputy prime minister of the cabinet. When he saw Li Tianlan come in, he narrowed his eyes and looked a little cold. It had been several years since the incident. But he still remembered the miserable appearance of his son when he died in the hospital. Li Tianlan glanced at him casually, found a corner to sit down, and did not speak. Bai Zhanfang and Wu Jingmin walked in. The two glanced at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan shook his head, and his eyes were firm. The two old men who had been truly all-powerful in Zhongzhou state all their lives sat down side by side without batting an eyelid. More and more people walked into the conference room. The secretary came in and filled the cups of tea for the members of parliament present. A sweet-looking female secretary, less than 30 years old, had been looking at Li Tianlan curiously. She did not come to her senses until the tea overflowed and flowed out of the teacup. She was slightly shocked and was about to apologize in a panic, but Li Tianlan's palm had quietly brushed over the table. Update fastest mobile, :// the flowing tea froze, the sparks flashed for a moment, and everything disappeared without a trace. Li Tianlan smiled and waved at the secretary, then casually glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 9:00 in the morning. President Li Huaqing of Zhongzhou State walked into the conference room. Everyone got up at the same time. Li Huaqing walked to the center and sat down. He nodded and said, "Everyone, sit down." Li Tianlan sat down silently, looked at the empty seat opposite Li Huaqing, and remained silent. Li Huaqing picked up the teacup, took a sip of tea, and waved his hand to signal the secretary to leave. After everyone went out, he put down the teacup and said calmly, "Everyone has seen the agenda of the meeting in advance. The chaos in Eastern Europe seems to be over, but in fact, there is only less war. The general trend has been settled, but it has not been completely calmed down. Snow country, the 5 countries in Eastern Europe, there are many things to deal with. If you have any ideas, you can speak freely." The conference room was quiet for a moment. Li Tianlan silently picked up the teacup. Li Huaqing looked at everyone's expression in his sight. He waited for a while, and seeing that no one spoke, he took the initiative to say, "Tianlan, how is the situation in the 5 countries in Eastern Europe?" "Everything is under control." Li Tianlan put down the teacup. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. 22 years old. Sitting in the conference room of the power center of Zhongzhou State for the first time, he was extremely calm. At present, the interest groups in Eastern Europe have an urgent desire to cooperate with Zhongzhou State. After the agreement with Wulan State is signed, I will urge Wulan State to fulfill the agreement as soon as possible. At present, time is relatively short, and I haven't mastered all the details for the time being. When Wulan State sorts out the detailed information, I will report to Mr. President alone." Li Huaqing nodded and said, Marshal Li, since you haven't mastered all the details, why do you say that everything is under control?" A voice suddenly sounded, gentle and tough. Not far from Li Tianlan, a gray-haired old man turned his head and looked at Li Tianlan with his bright and piercing eyes with great pressure. "Are you really sure that everything in the 5 countries in Eastern Europe is under your control?" No one spoke. Unlike Tang Wansen, although this old comrade in front of him was also a retired old comrade, his words and deeds carried absolute weight. Marshal Qi Baitsong, the former executive minister of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State. This was the top leader of the Special Warfare Group. In the world where he had just retired for more than 2 years, Dongqing Wudi had not completely eliminated his influence in the army headquarters. Qi Baitsong. Tang Wansen. There was also Lu Yu, another former military big shot in Zhongzhou State. These 3 came from the Southeast Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Prince Group respectively. They were also the 3 old comrades invited to the meeting today. From this alone, it could be seen that the academics were weak in the military and special warfare fields. Today, when discussing the situation of the Dark World in Eastern Europe, the academics could not choose any old comrades who could speak. Li Tianlan quietly glanced at Qi Baitsong. He reached out and tapped on the table. "I'm sure. At present, although I can't grasp the details of the 5 countries in Eastern Europe, there will be no variables on a large scale. I can control the 5 countries in Eastern Europe, especially Wulan State. As long as I can control Prime Minister Riker, that's enough." His voice was indifferent and confident. "Prime Minister Riker," Li Huaqing sighed softly. "During my visit to Wulan State this time, Prime Minister Riker's ruling ideas are very friendly and sincere to Zhongzhou State." Li Tianlan glanced at him and said nothing. Li Huaqing was equivalent to guaranteeing for him and confirming that he could control Riker. From the moment he came in, Li Tianlan noticed that although Li Huaqing was full of smiles, the look deep in his eyes was a little gloomy. The time for the rise of the academics was too short. If they wanted to break out and officially enter the ranks of the top groups in Zhongzhou State, it depended on Li Huaqing's achievements in the next few years. The chaos in Eastern Europe was such a big cake, and Snow Country's position was unclear. The academics could only put their hopes on the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. How much they could get depended on Li Tianlan's attitude. So even if Li Tianlan's relationship with the academics was subtle after he entered the giant group, at least in a short time, the two sides were still in a honeymoon period. Qi Beizong glanced at Li Huaqing, picked up the teacup, took a sip of tea, and stopped talking. Tianlan, you represent Zhongzhou State in Eastern Europe this time. Comrades don't know as much as you do. If you have any ideas, just say them. We can discuss them together. In the absence of Dongqing Wudi, Zhou Mulin, the only giant of the giant group, said this calmly. Li Tianlan's eyes flickered, and he quietly glanced at everyone in the conference room. The giants and members of parliament in the conference room were also looking at him. There was appreciation, playfulness, mockery, and malice in their eyes. Li Tianlan smiled. The wildfire hidden in his heart was gradually ignited. I do have an idea. Li Tianlan looked at Li Huaqing calmly. Li Huaqing nodded and kept his smile. Mr. President, comrades, in this chaos in Eastern Europe, the bravery of the Snowdance Corps is obvious to all, and the Snowdance Corps is also the cornerstone of stabilizing the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. However, in the chaos, the Snowdance Corps also suffered heavy losses. I suggest that the Snowdance Corps expand its establishment and set up a large corps of about 100,000 people in Eastern Europe. It will help the Arctic Ocean Command and completely stabilize the whole of Eastern Europe. In the stunned eyes of countless people, Li Tianlan looked calm. I have had a preliminary communication with Minister Dongqing on this matter. The minister agreed with my proposal in principle and came up with a preliminary plan for the expansion of the Snowdance Corps. The new Snowdance Corps will have about 100,000 people. It will draw elites from the Air Force, the Navy, and the Border Control Corps to form a large comprehensive corps. In the long run, the new Snowdance Corps will inevitably play a vital role in the stability of Eastern Europe. Everyone was stunned. Even Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan and did not speak for a long time. Before today, countless people in the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Southeast Group were discussing the complete cancellation of the establishment of the Snowdance Corps. The first step was to withdraw the wounded of the Snowdance Corps from Eastern Europe. It seemed to be a very natural test. Moreover, with the 3 groups joining hands, the academics could not completely fall out with the 3 groups. The giant group could not withstand this result at all. In this way, the 3 groups could justifiably remove Li Tianlan from the position of marshal. But now, why did it become the expansion of the Snowdance Corps when Li Tianlan came? Or a super-large comprehensive corps of 100,000 people? This was a blatant seizure of power. Everyone's inner thoughts were constantly changing. Now the key was that Li Tianlan could not know the idea of the 3 groups to cancel the establishment of the Snowdance Corps. Then where did he get the courage to expand the Snowdance Corps? Was he asking to be humiliated? Countless people's thoughts fluctuated. But the madness was not over. Li Tianlan knocked on the table and continued calmly, in addition, the minister and I believe that the Snowdance Corps and the Arctic Ocean Command with 100,000 people are enough to deter the whole of Eastern Europe. So such a force does not have to be gathered in the 5 countries of Eastern Europe. In the future, most of the new Snowdance Corps will be stationed in Snow Country to deter it. Boom! In an uproar, countless people raised their heads and looked at Li Tianlan in astonishment. Don't bother Marshal Li, in an indifferent and angry voice, Councillor Wen Siyuan of the Beihai province said indifferently, the Beihai Corps is currently negotiating with Snow Country, and there has been a very good result so far. I didn't stop you from negotiating with Snow Country. Li Tianlan looked into his eyes and said, "You can talk freely, but after the negotiation, the results of the negotiation will be taken over by the Snow Dance Corps." He leaned forward and looked into Wen Siyuan's eyes. "Don't you understand what I said? What a bastard!" In the furious voice, Tang Wansen, who had been silent, suddenly stood up. "Comrades, this is a blatant seizure of power. The Snow Dance Corps is a special warfare battalion. How can it expand to 100,000 people? It's completely nonsense. This has violated the original intention of the establishment of the Snow Dance Corps. How can a special warfare battalion take over the negotiation results of the Beihai Corps? Li Tianlan, do you really want to have troops in Eastern Europe?" There was a moment of silence in the conference room. Countless voices rang out. "It's true. I think it's appropriate for Beihai to guard Snow Country. Marshal Li has not thought it through. There's no need for the Snow Dance Corps to expand. As a special warfare battalion, it's better for the Snow Dance Corps to return home." In the countless voices, Li Huaqing's face darkened for a moment and he did not speak. A smile flashed in Tang Wansen's eyes, and he continued, "And I personally think that the Snow Dance Corps has suffered heavy losses this time and should return home to recuperate. The Beihai Corps is currently strong. The Beihai Corps is responsible for the stability of Wulan State and the 5 countries in Eastern Europe. It's the best choice to help the Arctic Ocean Command. Of course, Comrade Tianlan has made contributions, but he is still too young. The heavy losses of the Snow Dance Corps are also related to his immature decision-making. I suggest that Comrade Tianlan's position be adjusted. He can retain the rank of marshal, but it's better to choose an old and prudent comrade as the new commander of the Snow Dance Corps." Li Tianlan looked at Tang Wansen jumping up and down coldly. His performance was recognized by countless people. People from the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, and the Southeast Group spoke out one after another in favor of withdrawing the Snow Dance Corps. At the same time, Li Tianlan's position as the commander of the Snow Dance Corps was revoked, and he retained the rank of marshal. Among them, Prime Minister Chen Fangqing of Zhongzhou State spoke. The direction of the meeting was changing irreversibly. Comrade Tianlan is responsible for the heavy losses of the Snow Dance Corps. In this regard, I think Marshal Li should give everyone a reasonable explanation and an explanation. As for Eastern Europe, there is no problem with the agreement. But after the Beihai Corps is stationed in Wulan State, there are some things. Tang Wansen's voice was still ringing. Li Tianlan laughed. "Explanation, there is indeed an explanation." Li Tianlan said blandly, "I have sent someone to count. By the time I attended the meeting, more than 1,000 elites of the Snow Dance Corps had died in the hands of the devil troop of the Wang family of Beihai. In addition, I was seriously injured in the raid of the Wang family of Beihai. Old Tang, is this the explanation you want?" Everyone's heart suddenly trembled. Li Tianlan's words were clearly saying that the Wang family of Beihai was in the way of the chaos in Eastern Europe. No matter whether this was true or not, it was not good to say it out. Besides, Tang Wansen glanced at Li Tianlan with a smile, without any panic. His old face was twisted like a chrysanthemum. The Wang family of Beihai. The devil troop. He said with a smile, "Marshal Li is still too young, so you are deceived by some rumors from the outside world. I have served in Beihai and Zhongzhou State for many years, but I have never heard of the devil troop. Marshal Li said that the devil troop belongs to the Wang family of Beihai. Do you have any evidence?" His smile disappeared, and he said fiercely, "You must produce evidence today." In the chaos in Eastern Europe, the Sword Emperor turned the tide on his own. If it weren't for him, Snow Country and Wulan State would have nothing to do with Zhongzhou State today. Now the Wang family of Beihai is about to take over Snow Country and Wulan State, but you are here to slander the devil troop and try to erase the credit of Beihai. It's outrageous. Today. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows. "I really can't produce evidence today." He nodded and looked at the audience. "But there are some things, including the Snow Dance Corps and many other things, that the Wang family of Beihai must give me an explanation." He glanced at every big shot of the southeast group and said coldly, "After the meeting, I will go to Beihai province and Mount Dibing. On the stage of formidable person of Mount Dibing, I will ask for an explanation from Wang Tianzong face to face." The warm atmosphere in the conference room suddenly became dead silent. Go to Mount Dibing, go to the stage of formidable person, and ask for an explanation from Wang Tianzong. That touch of madness completely broke out, with a raging fire, burning wildly. Tang Wansen was stunned for a long time. He stared into Li Tianlan's eyes and said word by word, "How dare you go to Mount Dibing? Mount Dibing is also in Zhongzhou state. Why can't I go there?" Li Tianlan's voice was cold, and his killing intent was undisguised. "You slandered the Wang family of Beihai, and you still dare to go to Mount Dibing?" Tang Wansen was as fierce as an old dog. "Slander?" Li Tianlan laughed wildly. "You can say that this is slander, and I can think that you are ignorant. After all, your surname is not Wang. But when I stand on Mount Dibing, I will kill anyone from the Wang family of Beihai who dares to say that this is slander." Tang Wansen suddenly became furious. He stretched out his hand and almost pointed at Li Tianlan's nose and scolded, "You little bastard who doesn't care about the overall situation. How dare you go to Mount Dibing to kill people? Even your grandfather didn't dare. Do you know what you are doing? Do you know what the overall situation is?" Li Tianlan looked at him coldly and said seriously and calmly, "What is the overall situation? Ignorant, bastard, arrogant. This kind of person who doesn't care about the overall situation shouldn't be here. Get out. Get out. Get out now. I suggest that Li Tianlan be removed from all positions immediately. This bastard is destined to commit treason like Li Guangtu. Zhongzhou state can't tolerate such a scourge. Li Guangtu is sanctimonious. What did he hand in? Bullshit." Tang Wansen's angry roar, which almost lost his mind, shook the whole conference room. Li Tianlan looked at him, and his eyes became deeper and calmer. He looked at the twisted face and asked again, "What is the overall situation?" Marshal Li is really too impulsive. Yi Dongxing stood up and said calmly, "There is no devil troop in the Wang family of Beihai. If you want to explain, we can negotiate with the Wang family of Beihai. You go to Mount Dibing, which is ignoring the overall situation. At least the reason you said is not enough for you to desecrate the forbidden area of Mount Dibing." Li Tianlan said, "Oh," and asked, "Desecrate?" Yi Dongxing did not speak. On the stage of formidable person, Yi Dongxing's name did not appear on that stone. But the names of countless elders and ancestors of the Yi family were on that stone. The names of the Wang family of Beihai, the southeast group, countless people who did not have the surname Wang, their ancestors and elders were also engraved on the stone of formidable person. At that time, hundreds of years of glory had been accumulated. His eyes were extremely firm. "You mean my reason is not enough?" Li Tianlan looked at Yi Dongxing and asked. "Yes, it's not enough." Yi Dongxing's voice became more and more firm. Li Tianlan said, "Oh," and laughed, "If it's not enough, then it's not enough. I'm not going to find any more reasons." He looked at the audience with a smile and asked, "Tell me, what is the overall situation?" "The overall situation you're talking about, whose overall situation is it?" Chapter 620. No one could answer his question. What was the big picture? This had always been a simple yet complicated question. It was simple and clear at a glance, but it was so complicated that it could change at any time. The overall situation of Zhongzhou state was stability, unity, and anything else. It didn't really matter. The important thing was to look at the big picture. When this sentence was said, it would definitely hurt the interests of a certain person or a certain force. Therefore, in the hearts of those who were sacrificed or were forced to sacrifice, the so-called big picture was compromise. Li Tianlan did not want to compromise. Therefore, it didn't matter whose overall situation it was. The important thing was that he would not compromise. "Impudent, bastard, little bastard," Tang Wansen's voice became a little vague because of his excitement. he kept thinking in a furious voice. He stared at Li Tianlan with resentment in his eyes and gnashed his teeth. If I had known this, I would have arrested all the traitors of the Li family and executed them. Li Tianlan looked at him, his eyes still gentle. You talk too much. Tang Wansen glared at him, looking as if he wanted to bite Li Tianlan to death. No one said a word. Li Tianlan might not know why Tang Wansen was so extreme, but everyone present knew what was going on when they saw Tang Wansen's invitation list for this meeting. Tang clan was a major clan in Yuzhou province. Although it was not the top clan, it would never be looked down upon. Tang clan in Yuzhou province could be regarded as one of the most powerful branches of Tang clan of Beihai. Tang clan of Beihai was second to none in the world, not only in Zhongzhou state. Tang Shi, the daughter of the Tang family, was the fiancée of Wang Xingshao, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai. At a young age, she had begun to control the economic power of the Wang family of Beihai. Tang Wansen was a very ambitious person. Over the years, because of his ambition, the relationship between the Tang family of Yuzhou and the Tang family of Beihai had been very subtle. He had served as the deputy commander of the Beihai Corps, the deputy secretary-general of the army headquarters of Zhongzhou State, and the deputy minister. Before he left office many years ago, he had wanted to compete with Qi Beizong for the position of the minister of the standing minister. With his age and experience at that time, it was not impossible. However, in the end, he still couldn't suppress Qi Beizong and had no choice but to leave the military after losing the competition. The reason for his departure from the army was very complicated. To put it in perspective, the aftermath of the Li Consortium's treason case had not yet been settled. The Southeast Group was busy reorganizing its internal affairs and had no time to expand. In addition to this reason, the Tang family of Beihai did not give him enough support. From that moment on, the relationship between the Tang family of Yuzhou and the Tang family of Beihai was almost frozen. There was no doubt that he held a grudge against the Tang Corps and even against Mount Dibing. The immense resentment made him change his choice without batting an eyelid. He began to approach Wang Qinglei and successfully obtained Wang Qinglei's promise. The next generation of the Tang family was generally quite mediocre, but Tang Wansen was still filled with hope for the family. He had placed the future of the family in the hands of his son-in-law, and his son-in-law was extremely outstanding. Before he even reached middle age, he had already become a high-ranking member of the North Sea Legion and a trusted aide to Wang Qinglei, so Tang Wansen was very pleased with himself. Afterward, then his son-in-law died. He died in Li Tianlan's hands during his trip to Eastern Europe. Chen Qingwan, the former vice-marshal of the Snowdance Corps, was Tang Wansen's son-in-law. For the Tang family, this hatred was absolutely irreconcilable. In the chaos of curses, Tang Wansen stared at Li Tianlan and said vaguely, "Little bastard, when you die in Mount Dibing, the Holy Family will be buried with you." At that moment, Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly. His expression was still calm, but a kind of looming danger directly spread to the whole conference room. His eyes were quiet, but they were as sharp as a knife, shining in all directions. He turned his eyes away from Tang Wansen, looked at the audience, and repeated the question he had asked several times, "Who can tell me what the overall situation is?" Still, no one spoke. At this moment, Li Tianlan was calm. But in everyone's opinion, he was like a madman. He was indeed crazy. If not, how could he go to Mount Dibing? "You little, all right." Li Huaqing's voice suddenly sounded, interrupting Tang Wansen's curses. He frowned, glanced at several counselors and giants of the Southeast Group, and said slowly, "Mr. Tang, pay attention to your wording. Comrade Tianlan is the Marshal of Zhongzhou State. Whatever he does, he should have a reasonable explanation. I hope everyone can restrain themselves." The corner of Tang Wansen's mouth moved, and he subconsciously glanced at Wang Qinglei not far away. Wang Qinglei's face was still a little pale. He bowed his head and drank tea calmly. Tang Wansen quieted down and stopped talking. "Well, Tianlan, tell me about your Mount Dibing." Li Huaqing looked at Li Tianlan and asked indifferently. There was a touch of warmth in Li Tianlan's eyes. "This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. After he joined the giant group, his relationship with the academics was so delicate. At least at this time, Li Huaqing's seemingly indifferent attitude was actually to find a way out for him. But he didn't need these things. From the second he entered the conference room, Li Tianlan had made up his mind. He stood on this stage, and he would not go down unless he died. I've already told you the reason. He said softly, Wang Tianzong has to give me an explanation about the Devil Troop, the loss of the Snowdance Corps, and his cooperation with Rothschild. Marshal Li, what you said is groundless. There is no evidence, so it's not a reason. Yi Dongsheng's voice was cold. Li Tianlan smiled, looked at Yi Dongsheng, and said expressionlessly, not a reason. So what? Yi Dongsheng froze for a moment and suddenly couldn't say a word. Yes, even if it was not a reason, so what? He had already said that it was not enough if the reason was not enough, but he didn't want to look for it anymore. He just wanted to go to Mount Dibbing. It didn't matter what the reason was, he just wanted to go to Mount Dibbing. No matter whether everyone accepted it or not. Marshal Li, no one can deny it, and no one is qualified to deny it. The stability of Zhongzhou State is above everything else. Qi Beizong slowly raised his head and looked at Li Tianlan with sharp eyes. No one thinks you are going to Mount Dibbing for tea based on your current attitude. Li Tianlan looked at him, squinted, and said, what do you mean by A gentle and amused voice rang out unhurriedly. There were many meanings. This word was very interesting. With the rise and fall of the tone, it could express different emotions. But it was the first time that someone asked it face to face. Li Tianlan turned his head and looked over. That was the middle of the conference room. Beside Li Huaqing was Qin Fangqing. Li Tianlan looked at them one by one and finally stopped at the fifth position. Zhongzhou State Council, Minister Ji Wenzhang of the Ministry of Supervision looked at him with a smile and waited for his answer. Li Tianlan twitched the corner of his mouth. The Southeast group used to be very big, and so did the Li family. Li Honghe used to have high standards. At that time, among the camp of the Li family in the Southeast group, Li Honghe was most optimistic about two people in the political circle. One was Wu Jingmin. And the other was Ji Wenzhang. During the more than 20 years when the Li family fell into the dust, Ji Wenzhang, who had always been regarded as the confidant of the Li family, had been rising rapidly and finally became a giant. Li Tianlan nodded and said, there was no way to talk on this day. Ji Wenzhang was stunned for a moment, then shook his head with a smile and said with emotion, you are still too young and full of vigor. Tianlan, I don't recommend you to go to Mount Dibbing, because no matter what the result is, it will destroy the overall situation of Zhongzhou State. It's not appropriate. Vice President Wan Qingyun, who had always been with Ji Wenzhang, said briefly. Why do you need to prove something that doesn't exist? Wang Qinglei said in a light tone. I don't agree with Marshal Li going to Mount Dibbing. Yi Dongsheng directly expressed his attitude. Young man, it's better to be steady. Qin Fangqing looked at Li Huaqing and gave his opinion with a smile. Li Tianlan's face was still calm, but there was impatience in his eyes. I'm here to attend the meeting today, not to ask for your opinions. You can express your opinions, and you can also consider whether I'm qualified to continue to be the marshal. It doesn't matter. Li Tianlan put his hands on the table and looked at everyone present. It has nothing to do with you if I go to Mount Dibbing, and it has nothing to do with whether I'm a marshal or not. I'm the Palace Lord of Emperor Dong's palace, and I'm using this identity to ask Wang Tianzong for an explanation. There was a sudden silence. Tang Wansen, who had been quiet for a while, suddenly stood up and screamed, treason. This is treason. Damn Emperor Dong's palace, execute him, this damn little bastard, I propose a vote. Enough. Li Huaqing suddenly pounded the table and stood up. He glared at Li Tianlan, then at Tang Wansen, and remained silent for a long time. Everyone was looking at him, waiting for his decision. It might be impossible to vote on whether Li Tianlan was a traitor or not. But for the moment, a vote was enough to remove Li Tianlan from his military post. Mr. President, Chen Fengqing said slowly, how about? Li Huaqing waved his hand. He took a deep breath and picked up the teacup. After a while, he said calmly, the meeting is over. After saying this, he pushed the chair away and left the conference room without looking back. The conference room was noisy for a moment and then quieted down. Chen Fengqing thought for a while, shook his head with a smile, and left. More and more people understood the reason for the meeting to be over. This chapter is not over. Please turn the page. Meaning. Everyone was deep in thought. Only the parliamentarians and giants belonging to the Wang family of Beihai looked a little pale. Strictly speaking, Li Huaqing's dismissal at this time was not because he was partial to Li Tianlan. Everyone in the Prince Group and the Special Warfare Group accepted this because they were also watching. Li Tianlan was going to Mount Dibing. What result he would get on Mount Dibing directly determined the direction of this meeting. Li Tianlan was very strong. But he was going to Mount Dibing. No one thought that Li Tianlan would win. Even if he would not lose, he would never win. He might even die directly on Mount Dibing. As long as Li Tianlan died, even if he was given the rank of marshal, so what? After his death, countless people present were destined not to be soft-hearted, and the Li family would be destroyed. Even if Li Tianlan was lucky to survive, as long as the Wang family of Beihai fought back with all its strength, they could take away everything Li Tianlan had now. The rank of marshal, Snowdance Corps, Wulan State. Nothing could be kept. Li Huaqing and the academics undoubtedly had hope for him. However, more people were now waiting to see Li Tianlan's joke, as well as the Wang family of Beihai's joke. Li Tianlan smiled. His figure twisted in the conference room, and the next second, he had appeared outside the conference room. The sun was shining, the blue sky and white clouds. Autumn came down. The heat of late summer had brought the coolness of early autumn. Li Tianlan walked forward alone. Blue water, blue sky, green trees, and grass. Everything was so beautiful. On this day, at this moment, he finally carried the Li family on his shoulders. This was his Li family. The gate of the hidden dragon sea was right in front of him. Li Tianlan looked quietly in the direction of Prince Yong's mansion. Under the sun, he stretched out his palm. There was a sudden buzz in the bedroom of Prince Yong's mansion. The huge sword box that had been placed on Li Tianlan's bedside completely exploded. The dark Xianyuan sword rose into the air. The sun, moon, and stars had dimmed. But the huge dark sword was still full of unparalleled majesty. A faint and somewhat unclear feeling of elation filled the room. The huge sword shook violently. In the clear sound of breaking, the bright glass was broken into powder. The dark giant sword passed through the whole mansion in an instant. This was a sword that had consumed all the sword energy but still had a soul. It returned to nothingness in the void, tearing the space like a transparent flowing light. In the living room of the mansion, Qin Weibai stood in front of the huge French window and watched the scene in a daze. She really didn't know martial arts, so she couldn't feel the sword energy or see the transparent flowing light. But the moment the sword box was broken, the whole manor was filled with an indescribable coldness. That feeling of coldness was getting farther and farther away. Qin Weibai was silent for a while and whispered, "He has set off. Are you sure I don't need to go?" Wei Kunlun sat on the sofa and said without looking up, "I'm not sure." Qin Weibai shook her head. "But he won't let you go. If you go, he will be angry. You only worry about whether he will be angry or not, but not about his safety." Wei Kunlun looked at Qin Weibai and asked, "This is caring." Qin Weibai was silent for a while and said calmly, "I care about his will. More than anything." Wei Kunlun looked at her for a while and suddenly laughed. "You really don't look like it," he said, "far from it." Qin Weibai narrowed her eyes and looked at him. She ordered, "Let military counselor come to see me." Wei Kunlun looked at Qin Weibai playfully and didn't speak for a long time. Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows, and she suddenly became cold and sharp. Wei Kunlun lowered his head and picked up the teacup. He said lightly, "He is different from me. Military counselor is the real confidant of the palace master. Let him come to see you." He shook his head and said lightly, "I think you should go to see him." Qin Weibai turned her head and looked in the direction of the hidden dragon sea. That was the return path of the sword light and also the starting point. In the sunlight that no one could see, the transparent flowing light tore up all the afterglow of the old era and fell in Li Tianlan's hand with the brilliance of the new era. The giant sword was nothing. Li Tianlan looked down at his palm and the road under his feet. He had walked out of the hidden dragon sea and out of the heavily guarded alley. The busy and prosperous Yuzhou showed up in front of him little by little. Li Tianlan looked north, in the direction of the Wang family of Beihai. At this moment, under his feet, there was a journey. End of this chapter. Bookmark for easy reading.